Marvel's master of multiversal magic. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 351 Galadriel wins battle with Soren. The Grey Elves have actually emerged from their shells. How interesting. Soren touched the ring on his right hand, then looked at George, the only human among the Grey Elves, a mocking smile on his face. Human, I didn't expect we'd meet again so soon. But this time, it seems you'll be the one running. The Grey Elves were far weaker than the Noldor Elves, and there were only 200 Grey Elves before him, none of whom were renowned Noldor masters like Finrod. Looking at his subordinates, the most powerful vampire guard on Wolf Island, they were far superior to a mere 200 Grey Elves. And he himself, empowered by the ring, was 3 times stronger than he had been in the Great Canyon. His defeat in the Great Canyon wasn't because this human was stronger, but because he was caught off guard by the combined attack of this human and the Elven Prince. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost so easily. Therefore, he was absolutely confident he could completely crush this human and these Grey Elves. He intended to capture this human and all the Grey Elves and take them back to Wolf Island to torture them slowly, to vent his hatred. As he spoke, the dark power within him erupted, instantly enveloping the entire Valley of Death with his terrifyingly increased power, 3 times stronger. The Valley of Death, previously purified by George, seemed poised to revert to its previous state under the dense dark power. This guy's strength has increased so much, sensing the overwhelming dark power of the great demon King Soren, George couldn't help but show surprise. It hadn't been long since Soren had been defeated and forced to flee with him and Finrod, and he felt that the power within Soren seemed to have increased 3 or 4 times, almost like he had cheated. Luckily, my cheat is even bigger, otherwise I really would have had to flee today. Soren's strength had increased 3 or 4 times, but his had increased even more. When he fought Soren in the Grand Canyon, he hadn't yet learned the laws of the fairies, hadn't advanced to level 5 ability user, hadn't grasped the essence of lightning, hadn't become a dragon slayer mage, and hadn't transformed into a dragon. Now, upon closer examination, his overall strength has increased at least 10-fold. Crucially, he possesses a significant advantage against Soren, a dark force corrupted by Morgoth and fearing the light. While he might not be able to defeat Marion, he's confident against Soren. It's not that Marion is significantly stronger than Soren, both are top-tier matter, their strengths not vastly different. It's simply that Marion's power is beyond his control, forcing him to rely solely on brute force. Moreover, he's not alone. Galadriel's strength far surpasses Finrod's, who fought alongside him against Soren. Lucia is even more formidable, her spells can even catch Morgoth off guard, and her magical abilities exceed Galadriel's. As for the 200 Grey Elves, they are no ordinary Grey Elves, they are the elite, handpicked by Tingle over a week, arguably the strongest and most promising Grey Elves in the kingdom. Each one is a formidable fighter, far stronger than the average Noldor elf. So Soren, believing victory was assured, thought he was playing cat and mouse. In reality, his cat wasn't playing with a mouse, but with a muscular kangaroo. Fine, I let you escape last time, this time I'll finish you off, facing the overwhelming, terrifying dark power. George slowly extended his right hand, making a taunting come-on gesture towards Soren. Soren and Gothmog were Morgoth's right-hand men, eliminating either one would severely cripple Morgoth's forces. It was rare for Soren to appear with such a small force, nestled between the Noldor and Grey Elves in the Valley of Death, practically deep within enemy territory. This wasn't like the Great Canyon, where he could easily escape into Angbin with a few flaps of his wings. You lowly human, you will pay for your arrogance. Seeing that his opponent dared to provoke him despite his current power, Soren angrily drew his demon sword from his waist. He anticipated that his opponent should be trembling with fear by now, either begging for mercy on their knees or running away. Light magic, fairy law. George had no time to coordinate with Soren. He immediately unleashed the most powerful light magic attack, the one most effective against dark power, concentrating the full damage of fairy law on Soren himself. The other vampire minions were insignificant, severely injuring Soren was the priority. A massive magic circle rose again in the Valley of Death, a pillar of light enveloping Soren. So it was you. So it was you my master was looking for. Faced with this deadly light magic, Soren quickly activated all the power of the ring, completely enveloping himself in dense darkness. The blinding light dissipated, and Soren, panting heavily, stared at George in shock. This is impossible. How could a mere human like you wield such powerful light magic? He recognized all the Vera and Maz. He was certain George couldn't be an incarnation of a Vera or Maz. He was just a human. But how could a weak human possibly wield light energy far more powerful than the matter? If it weren't for the ring, such powerful light magic would have likely crippled him with a single blow. Even with the ring's full defense, he still suffered some injuries. Fortunately, the magic seemed to have taken a toll on the human as well. His face had noticeably paled, and his life force had weakened considerably. If this level of light magic could be used so easily, he wouldn't hesitate to turn and flee. Kill him. Soren no longer considered capturing and torturing him. His only thought was to kill the human while he was weakened, preventing him from unleashing that terrifying light magic a second time. So he led all the vampires, charging towards George immediately. "George, how are you?" Luciette, seeing George's pale face and significantly diminished life force, immediately rushed forward to ask with concern. Galadriel, meanwhile, drew her elven longsword, mounted a great stag, and excitedly led the Grey Elves to meet Soren. As she charged, she called out to Luciette, "Luciette, warm me a cup of fruit wine. I'll drink it when I get back after beheading Soren." Of all the stories George had told Lucia these past few days, her favorite was the one about the elf warming wine before slaying the orc. Now she could finally use it herself, and against Soren, Morgoth's general. "I'm fine, I just need a bit." "You go help Galadriel, she's no match for Soren alone." George smiled and nodded at Lucia's concern. Seeing that George was truly alright, Lucia chased after Galadriel. Chapter 352 5 Elements Kabbalah Sealing Barrier. It seems that even if I unleash the fairy law in my dragon form, it won't be enough to kill Soren in his current state. George placed his hand on an ancient tree beside him, absorbing its life force to quickly replenish his own depletion. Then, he spread his wings and began to set up an array around the battlefield. Based on the effect of the fairy law he had just unleashed in his human form, at its strongest power, he had already made a judgment. If he couldn't kill Soren in one blow, Soren would definitely escape immediately. Once he escaped back to Angbin, all his efforts would have been in vain. That's why he didn't stop Galadriel from engaging Soren. He wanted Galadriel and Lothian to temporarily delay Soren, giving him time to set up the magic array. He wanted to trap Soren first, preventing his escape, and then use all his strength to kill him. Fortunately, he had recently learned a 5-element sealing array from the Leaf family and, combined with his previous Kabbalah spells and spell barriers, created a unique 5 elements Kabbalah sealing magic. This 5 elements Kabbalah sealing array has no offensive power, but possesses extremely strong defensive capabilities, both internally and externally. However, setting it up takes some time. One of the 5 elements that constitute the world, the great primordial fire, manifest, king of witch hunters, George stood in a corner of the battlefield, extending a finger while chanting the incantation and inscribing a Kabbalah spell in the air. This method of spell inscription originated from fairy tales spell barriers, but the content of the spell was that of Puritan magicians. The combination of the two prevented the spell from disappearing if the spell paper was destroyed. The spell was complete, and a female giant composed entirely of fire appeared on the ground. God shaped it from the earth, breathed life into it, and named it Manifest, Stone Giant. Quickly moving to another location, George conjured another stone giant in the same way. Then came the water giant, the metal giant, and the tree giant. 5 giants stood in the positions of the 5 elements formation. George formed Taoist hand seals and slammed them onto the ground: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. 5 elements sealing formation, activate. The 5 elements energy shot out from the 5 giants, converging in the sky. The massive 5 elements formation instantly took shape, with a black and white yin-yang fish appearing in its center, absorbing the power of heaven and earth and enveloping the entire battlefield. Using elemental giants condensed by Kabbalah as the core of the formation has a significant advantage. No matter how you destroy it, it can recondense, making it impossible to destroy by brute force. To destroy elemental giants condensed by Kabbalah, one must either defeat the spellcaster or destroy the Kabbalah spell that formed the elemental giants. However, George optimized the way the Kabbalah spell was released using fairy tales spell magic, so that path was blocked. The only remaining option was to defeat George himself, the spellcaster. However, if George could be defeated, there would be no need to worry about being trapped in the Five Elements Kabbalah ceiling formation. The primary purpose of this formation was to prevent enemies from escaping after being severely wounded. It was a 5-elemental magic array composed of 5 indestructible Kabbalah elemental giants, incorporating numerous defensive magical techniques. Considering the array's strength, even if George were to transform into a dragon, it would take him at least half an hour to break it. Therefore, attempting to break the seal by brute force was virtually impossible. Furthermore, this law could be used to trap enemies internally and to defend externally, its effectiveness far surpassing any individual spell barrier or super protective charm he might use. The ceiling barrier formed by the 5-elemental array and its powerful energy fluctuations instantly alerted Soren on the battlefield. He wielded his magic sword, repelling Galadriel and Lothine, and led the vampire warriors away from the battle. Galadriel and Lothine, along with the wounded Grey Elves, retreated to George's side. Soren, possessing the One Ring, was incredibly powerful. Even though he had initially suffered considerable damage from George's attack using the Law of the Fairies, he still dealt with Galadriel and Lothine with ease. If they hadn't been startled by the ceiling barrier George had created, Galadriel and Lothine probably wouldn't have been able to hold on for long. Soren's strength, it's unbelievable, Galadriel gasped, her chest heaving, her face filled with disbelief. She knew she was no match for Soren, but she hadn't expected the difference in strength to be so vast. Even with Lothine's help, they had faced several close calls. How about I sing? Lothine wiped the sweat from her brow. She could use her singing to cast a spell, hypnotizing Soren and all the vampires opposite her. However, once her spell was activated, it was indiscriminate hypnosis. George, Galadriel, and all the Grey Elves would also be affected. But that didn't matter. Once everyone was hypnotized, she could release George and the others, and then have George use the method she had previously mentioned to teleport them away. As for attacking Soren while he was hypnotized, that was out of the question. Because those who were soothed and asleep under her spell would immediately wake up if attacked with hostility. How unwilling I am, Galadriel's face showed resentment upon hearing this. Such a good opportunity. Normally, a general like Soren is surrounded by densely packed orcs, making it virtually impossible to kill him. Moreover, being defeated and forced to flee in such a sorry state on his very first battle outside the forest would be incredibly embarrassing. George, what kind of powerful technique did you set up? How powerful is it? Looking at the 5 elemental giants surrounding the entire battlefield, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. If the elemental giants George had set up were powerful enough to injure Soren again, perhaps the 3 of them could gang up on him and have a chance of winning. This one is quite powerful, but it's a ceiling formation, mainly to trap Soren and those vampires to prevent them from escaping. It doesn't have much offensive power, George replied honestly. Prevent me from escaping? Ha ha ha, human, I think it's you who's going to run away. Soren, we'll never run away from you a second time. Hearing George's words, Soren planted his magic sword in the ground and laughed mockingly. The 2 female elves opposite him were indeed stronger than he had expected, but in his current eyes, they were nothing special and utterly incapable of harming him. The human who could harm him was probably weakened after casting that initial light magic. Yet, faced with this situation, the human's idea of setting up a barrier to trap him and prevent his escape was utterly foolish. Indeed, humans, this weak species, even with immense power, possessed little wisdom. Chapter 353 The Tragic Tale of Soren. George, quickly dispel the magic circle. Lucia activated the divine power inherited from her mother, preparing to sing to hypnotize the other side after George broke the seal. Galadriel, meanwhile, unleashed the light power within her once more, stepping forward to buy Lucia time. No need, it's not time yet. You two stay back and cover for me, I'll handle him. George grabbed Galadriel by the collar, forcefully lifting the half-protruding Galadriel and placing her aside, while covering Lucia's mouth with his other hand to stop her from singing. Lucia pried George's hand away, her voice filled with worry. George looked much better now, but she remembered how weak he had been for a long time when he demonstrated the magic to purify the Valley of Death. Don't worry, I fully recovered, George interrupted Lothine, laughing. When I sparred with Galadriel before, I didn't even use a tenth of my strength. Soren is no match for me. The reason he was weak for so long in the Grey Elf Kingdom was because he was embarrassed to absorb the life force from the ancient trees there. After all, They were all carefully raised by Marilyn. Moreover, there were tree people living there to protect the trees, and absorbing the life force from the ancient trees would make the tree people hate him. But this is not the Grey Elf Kingdom, and he has just fully absorbed and replenished his depleted life force. George, don't talk big. You don't even use a tenth of your strength when you fight me. Galadriel, who was standing to the side, heard George and Lothian's conversation and was full of dissatisfaction. She admitted that George was stronger than her, but she didn't believe that George was so much stronger. Whether I am talking big or not, you'll find out in a moment. George smiled, spread his wings and flew into the air, silently chanting a spell. An Imagus transformation, his body rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, the human George transformed into a 500-meter-long dragon. This was the first winged dragon to appear in Middle-earth. While the previous Glorin was the first ancestral dragon created by Morgoth, it had no wings and couldn't fly. How could this be? This isn't. Soren, who had been looking at George like he was a clown, suddenly changed his expression. He wasn't unfamiliar with winged dragons, but those were new species his master Morgoth was creating, not yet fully matured. How could this human become a new species created by his master? 300 years ago, Morgoth created the first ancestral dragon, Glorin, but he wasn't satisfied with Glorin's strength. So, while nurturing Glorin, he refined his methods. After Glorin was fully nurtured, he finally created a dragon with even greater potential and perfection, a winged dragon, the most perfect of which was called Enchiridion. But these new dragons were not yet fully complete, still absorbing power and growing at the bottom of Mount Angbin. Light magic, fairy law. Before he could even figure out the relationship between the human opposite him and his master Morgoth, a magic circle 10 times larger than the first one had already formed, and the immense light energy caused his expression to change drastically. In his dragon form, George was far stronger than in his human form in terms of physique, magical abilities, and vitality, so the fairy law he cast was naturally much more powerful. Boom! A blinding white light descended upon the Valley of Death once more, and all the vampires except Soren instantly turned to ashes in the light. This time, George did not focus his attacks on Soren, because it was unnecessary. He didn't care about the extra life force he would expend to deal with the other vampires in his current state. Even with the protection of the ring, Soren was still burned by the light power and let out a deafening scream. Light magic, fairy law. Having barely survived the spell's end, George immediately unleashed a second spell. In his dragon form, his life force recovered very quickly. After casting more than a dozen fairy law spells, he only needed to rely on absorbing the life force of trees to recover. Soren, the Magyar and orcs seduced by Morgoth, feared nothing more than the power of light. Therefore, there was no need for him to use other spells. He could only achieve the best effect by continuously attacking with the spells most effective against his enemies. After 5 consecutive attacks, Soren finally couldn't hold on any longer. He knew that if this continued, his physical body would be finished. So he immediately used a transformation spell, becoming a terrifying giant serpent, and fled into the distance while enduring the attacks of light magic. Dignity was nothing compared to life. Escape was the only option. Unfortunately, he hadn't gone far when he was blocked by an invisible wall, and despite several bursts of power, he couldn't break through it. It was the 5 elements Kabbalah sealing array set up by George that had taken effect. Enduring the burning sensation from the light energy, Soren calmed himself and observed the array. As the most learned Magyar of all time, although this was the first time he had seen such a magic array, he quickly found the key. The key to the magic array was the 5 elemental giants. If he destroyed even one, the array would automatically dissolve, and he could escape. So he flashed forward and bit the nearest earth giant. In his serpent form, Soren's physical strength was immense. With a gentle bite, the rock-formed earth giant instantly shattered into powder. How could this be? However, to Soren's surprise, the earth giant reformed in less than a second. And no matter how many times he destroyed it, the earth giant could reform. He then tried the metal, wood, water, and fire giants, but the result was the same. He couldn't break the magic circle by destroying 5 elemental giants. George watched Soren from above, neither stopping him nor launching a sneak attack when the fairy law activated. His thinking was simple: the more Soren was injured by the fairy law, the easier it would be for him to fight later, so he would wear him down first. Anyway, Soren was trapped in the magic circle for a short time and couldn't escape. With Soren's vast knowledge, Given a few days to study it, he might be able to break the magic circle with his own knowledge, but a few hours was definitely out of the question. Because he wasn't using the magical knowledge of this world, but rather a magic circle created by merging the magical knowledge of several worlds. I'll fight you to the death. Once Soren realized he couldn't destroy the magic circle, he reacted quickly, unleashing all his dark power. Braving the fairy laws, he flew into the sky and lunged at George's neck. Since escape was impossible, he had no choice but to fight to the death. Chapter 354 The Temptation of Morgoth. Another giant serpent. The one I dealt with before was much bigger than this. Seeing Soren transform into a giant serpent, its body expanding and lunging at him, George shook his head. He used giant magic to become even larger than Soren, then extended his dragon claws and grabbed at him from above. If Soren had unleashed his full power from the start, he would have been in real trouble. But now, after a series of attacks from the fairy laws, Soren was already seriously injured, and his strength was probably less than half of what it used to be. To be honest, Soren's transformed serpent wasn't as threatening as the serpent that Odin's brother, the god of fear Clover, had transformed into. It wasn't that Soren was weaker than Clover, but light magic was much more effective against Soren than against Clover, and Soren's overall strength had increased significantly since the fight with Clover. Powerful dragon claws gripped Soren's transformed serpent tightly, slamming it back to the ground. A torrent of tricolored flames erupted from the dragon's mouth, drawing in endless iron sands from the earth to form massive chains that tightly bound the serpent's head, which was trying to bite back. Over 1 billion volts of electricity burst from George's dragon claws, while purple lightning, accompanied by the laws of the fairies, rained down from the sky. Despite Soren unleashing all the dark energy within him, his body twisting and struggling, trying to strangle George, it was all in vain against George's numerous methods. The final result was like an eagle preying on a venomous snake. Soren's serpent form was torn into countless pieces, gradually dissipating amidst flames, lightning, and light. Human, I will return. Soren's physical body was destroyed, his soul floating in the air, uttering this harsh word before departing. The Valor and Matyr were both gods. They had only acquired physical bodies after entering Middle-earth for convenience and better use of their power. The destruction of their physical bodies did not truly kill them. Ordinary Matyr souls leave Middle-earth and return to Illivatar, like the Balrogs. However, a Matyr of Soren's caliber, given enough time, can slowly rebuild a new body to replace his physical form and continue using his power. Seal, but George wouldn't give Soren the chance. He reverted to human form, pulled a pre-made nesting doll from his special storage, and began casting the nesting doll sealing spell from the mage apprentice world onto Soren's soul. No, Soren, stripped of his power and left only with his soul, hadn't expected George to possess such a method. Caught off guard, he was directly sucked into the nesting doll. A top-tier Matyr's soul, it might be useful in the future. George put away the nesting doll, then suddenly sensed something. He looked down at the spot where Soren had just been, where a ring radiating irresistible allure appeared. Instinctively, he picked up the ring and put it on his finger. A whispered voice immediately reached his ear. "Follow me, and I will grant you endless life, endless knowledge, and endless power. You will become one of the rulers of this world, your status surpassing that of the gods." The whispered voice, like a reptile in the darkness, gradually eroded George's soul. At that moment, the eyes of the original Marvel suddenly opened, and in the worlds of Harry Potter, Fairy Tale, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, a certain magical index, and Cardcaptor Sakura, all the clones simultaneously opened their eyes. Get out, accompanied by the roar of the original and all the clones, the soul strength of the Middle-earth clone suddenly surged sevenfold, completely driving away Morgoth's soul-corroding power, and its eyes regained their clarity. Seal, having regained consciousness, George immediately cast various sealing spells on the ring in his hand, severing the connection between the ring and Morgoth. How could a ring appear at this time, and why does it contain Morgoth's power? Confirming that Morgoth was completely isolated, George pulled out the ring and examined it closely. According to the normal timeline, the One Ring was created by Sauron after Morgoth's imprisonment, in order to control the elves, men, and dwarves, especially the One Ring. This timeline shouldn't exist. However, upon closer reflection, because of his appearance, the history of Middle-earth had already deviated from its original course, and this ring seemed more likely to have been created by Morgoth. Otherwise, Morgoth wouldn't have been able to corrupt his soul through the ring. A blessing in disguise, George couldn't help but sigh as he put the ring back on his hand. Just now, in the critical moment when his clone's soul was being corrupted by Morgoth, his main body and all the clones in the other world sensed the danger and instinctively transferred all their soul power to this clone. This caused the clone's soul power to surge dramatically, forcibly expelling Morgoth's invasion. If he could actively control this ability later, perhaps he could use this method to concentrate the souls and magic of the other clones into any clone or his main body at any time. In that case, he would essentially have an extra trump card. Moreover, this isn't just any ordinary trump card. As the strength of his main body and his clones increases, and as the number of his clones grows, the value of this trump card will rise even further. For example, he's currently at the sub-celestial level, but if the power of all his clones were concentrated together, he could potentially reach the celestial level in a short time. Crucially, all his clones share the same power and physique. Concentrating the power won't cause any problems, allowing for perfect adaptation. Of course, achieving that will definitely require time for experimentation and research. What happened just now was merely an accident. Perhaps, after mastering this technique, he could truly use the connection between his clones to open up channels between different worlds. If Morgoth helped Soren forge this ring, it must contain a great deal of Morgoth's knowledge and power. Thoroughly studying it would be a considerable gain. With a hand seal, releasing the 5 elements Kabbalah sealing array, George turned to look at Lothian and the others, finding them all staring at him with blank expressions. The entire battle between George and Soren unfolded too quickly, too spectacularly, and too unexpectedly, leaving them still reeling from the shock. The matter is resolved, we can continue our journey. George stepped forward and waved to the group, bringing them back to their senses. George, how did you just turn into a dragon? Galadriel grabbed George's arm, asking incredulously. George chuckled, remember when we princes killed the Glotter created by Morgoth? I created a spell, absorbed the dragon's power, and then made some adjustments. That's why I could transform like that. Chapter 355 The First Grand Magician's Martial Arts Tournament. Is that even possible? Can I learn that kind of magic? Galadriel's eyes were full of anticipation. George nodded, of course, but the prerequisite is that you need a dragon's corpse to extract dragon crystals. As long as there are dragons and dragon crystals can be extracted, he doesn't mind helping elves, dwarves, and humans implant dragon crystals so they can learn dragon-slaying magic, or even become dragons themselves. Enhancing the strength of humans, elves, and dwarves to fight Morgoth is naturally a good thing. Unfortunately, according to normal development, Morgoth's dragon army will not be fully formed and released until 100 years later, so it's not something to think about for now. Dragons, okay. Galadriel's expression immediately showed disappointment when she heard that a dragon's corpse was needed to complete the magic. Dragons were created by Morgoth, and so far only one has appeared, which George has already used. George, are you hurt? Lothian reached out and touched George's body, her tone concerned. Although she was also surprised that George could become a dragon, she was only surprised and didn't want to know more. She was more concerned about whether George had been injured in his fight with a terrible Soren. It's alright. You and Galadriel already exhausted a lot of Soren's power, so the pressure on me was much less. George smiled, giving Galadriel a way out. The implication was that Galadriel and Lucy also played a part in his killing of Soren. Sure enough, Galadriel's disappointment vanished immediately upon hearing this, and she proudly declared, "That's right." Lucy couldn't help but laugh. Seeing Lucy laugh at her, Galadriel immediately teased, "Lucian, I've noticed you're quite concerned about George, haven't you? Don't talk nonsense. I just enjoy George's stories, so I don't want him to get hurt." Lucy blushed and gently tapped Galadriel on the head. George didn't seem too concerned. He told Lucia and Galadriel, "A little further ahead is the Valley of Death and the Terror Mountains. I'll clear the way and take care of those spiders. You two lead the group and follow slowly." With that, he transformed into a dragon again, flying towards the Terror Mountains. Then, he opened his mouth and began spewing down a vast expanse of tricolored flames. Wherever the terrifying tricolored flames passed, everything was burned to ashes. Countless bloodthirsty spiders and their dense webs were reduced to ash, becoming nourishment for the earth. A wide road gradually took shape, leading directly from the Valley of Death to the Terror Mountains. From then on, there was no longer any danger between Orsonian and Doriath. "We'll help too." Lucia and Galadriel summoned all the Grey Elves to use life magic. The Terror Mountains, which had just been burnt to ashes, slowly began to sprout green grass and bloom with wildflowers. The caravan, treading on the grass and wildflowers, set off again. Meanwhile, inside the palace in Angban's crypts, Morgoth's face was filled with doubt. What is this guy's origin? How could he resist my temptation and possess such powerful soul strength? Through the ring, he had witnessed the entire battle between Sauron and George, and he knew that the light power he had sensed last time, which wasn't at the level of the Maiar, had originated from a human. However, this human felt too peculiar. Not only was his light magic powerful, but he could also transform into a powerful dragon, possessing a soul strength comparable to that of a god. If he hadn't confirmed the other's true human nature upon touching their soul, he would have truly believed it was some Valar who had disguised themselves as a human and gone to Middle-earth. For him, this was good news. At least it proved that the gods hadn't noticed the situation in Middle-earth and weren't planning a collective attack on him. It was just a pity that his beloved General Sauron had perished this time, and that such a powerful human existed. This was not good news for his plans. It seems I need to nurture the dragon army as soon as possible. Closing his eyes, he telepathically communicated with a Balrog in the east. Gausmog, halt the westward expansion plan. Capture all the Noldor elves in the east, especially the 7 sons of Fëanor. I need them to feed the dragon army and accelerate their growth. 2 days later, George, leading a caravan of grey elves, finally returned to the elven city of Dorsonion. Next, the elites of the Noldor, grey elves, dwarves, and humans all gathered in the city, at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, founded by George, beginning an exchange of knowledge among the various races. By this time, aside from the gods of Valinor, George had gathered most of the knowledge of Middle-earth and entered a peaceful and stable state of study. Meanwhile, news of George's slaying of Sauron spread throughout the continent, making him the most famous human hero on the entire continent. In the fairy tale world, at the Fairy Tale Guild, George, who was studying the fairy orb in the basement, was suddenly awakened by a knock on the door. He paused his research, waved to open the door, and asked, "Macau, didn't I tell you not to bother me unless it's urgent?" "Guild Master, it's very urgent, and I can't make that decision." Macau, panting, handed George a poster. "This is a notice posted in town by the royal family of the Kingdom of Fiori." George took the poster, glanced at it, and a look of surprise crossed his face. The first Grand Magic Tournament of the Kingdom of Fiori. The poster's content wasn't complicated. It stated that the Fiori royal family would be holding a tournament in a week in the capital, Crocus, also known as the City of Flowers. The purpose of this tournament was to determine the strongest mage guild in the kingdom, and a prize of 30 million J was offered. Has there ever been a tournament like this before? Never. Although our guild has always been called the strongest mage guild, it's just hearsay. The kingdom doesn't have a definitive ranking of mage guild strength. Macau shook his head. Strange, why suddenly hold this kind of competition? It'll probably drive everyone crazy, George thought to himself. In this world, there's no first place in literature, but there's in martial arts. Mages and mage guilds also like to have a competition. The kingdom is now holding a mage guild competition, and to gain the honor of being the strongest mage guild, hundreds of guilds, large and small, across the country will probably sign up like crazy. After all, becoming the strongest mage guild in the kingdom will not only attract a large number of excellent mages, but also bring in tons of missions, generating huge profits for the guild. Guild Master, should we sign up? Macau asked, scratching his head. Chapter 356 Bringing You to Flight. Fairy Tale was once the kingdom's undisputed strongest mage guild. But that was then. Now, apart from Guild Master George, all the S-rank mages and slightly stronger guild members have disappeared due to the Tenrau Island incident, and it's unknown when George will be able to rescue them. If they were to register now, given the strength of their remaining mages, they probably wouldn't even make it into the main tournament. But if they didn't participate, the guild's reputation would plummet, even though it already is. I've been researching the fairy sphere lately. How is the guild doing? George didn't answer immediately but asked in return. During this time, he had been in seclusion researching the fairy sphere and the ultimate weapon, Meteor Shower, created from the body of the first guild master. All the guild's affairs had been left to Vice Guild Master Mark. Upon hearing this, Mark's head drooped. It's very bad. The guild mages aren't strong enough right now, so they can't complete many high-difficulty missions, and gradually the guild's missions are decreasing. Fewer missions mean fewer suitable ones for the guild mages, less reward, and some members are choosing to leave the guild to join stronger ones. The more mages leave, the weaker the guild becomes, and the fewer missions are offered, creating a vicious cycle. I see. George scratched his whiskers, showing no surprise. This was exactly what he expected, something he had deliberately orchestrated. Actually, he had previously felt that while Axis's viewpoint was extreme, it wasn't entirely without merit. Survival of the fittest, the strong prevailing, these principles apply in any world. Relying solely on bonds and friendships is unlikely to make a guild thrive. You see, Fairy Tail values bonds so much. After the elite mages disappeared, everyone scattered. If this continued, they might gradually fall to the bottom of the kingdom's guilds. Therefore, if the guild wants to grow stronger, it needs to recruit as many strong and promising mages as possible. However, he couldn't simply expel those weak mages, that would seem too heartless, violate the old guild master's principles, and make others uncomfortable. So, he used the excuse of researching fairy spheres to save the old guild master and others to temporarily neglect the guild. Sure enough, those mages who initially joined because of Fairy Tail's reputation as the strongest guild, who were weak but troublesome, all left after realizing the guild was declining. Those who remained, while not particularly strong, were at least deeply attached to the guild and loyal enough, which he could accept. In his view, guild members either need strength or loyalty. Without both, what use are they? If it weren't for this goal, with his strength, he could easily complete all the guild's high-difficulty missions by spending half a day a week using his teleportation ability. The guild wouldn't be in its current state. Let's sign up. We can take the honor of being the strongest mage guild and let everyone know that even now, Fairy Tail is still the strongest mage guild in the kingdom. If they can defeat all the other mage guilds in the kingdom in this competition and become the truly strongest, many skilled mages will naturally join. This way, the guild's overall strength will recover quickly, and the mission load will also recover due to the reputation of being the strongest guild, creating a virtuous cycle. Then he can be a hands-off manager again and focus on researching magic. After all, he's the new guild leader. If the seal on the fairy sphere is broken and Makarov returns to find the guild the weakest in the kingdom, where will his face as the fourth guild leader be? But, Guild Master, look here. It says here that the guild master can't participate in the competition, Mikhail cautiously reminded him. He knew George was strong. In the previous Fairy Tail First Mage tournament, he had even defeated S-rank Laxus, making him a top-tier S-rank mage. However, according to the Grand Mage tournament rules, guild leaders couldn't participate. Many guild leaders were S-rank mages, and some were even members of the 10 wizard saints like Makarov and Phantom Lord's guild master Joseph. A fight between them would likely destroy the entire kingdom's capital. If George couldn't participate, then choosing someone from the remaining Fairy Tail members would be the same result. I see. George casually waved his paw. What's so difficult about that? From today onwards, Mikhail, you are the 5th guild master of Fairy Tail. Since the guild master couldn't participate in the competition, the position would be passed on to Mikhail. After all, Mikhail handled most of the guild's affairs outside the guild, so calling him guild master wasn't wrong. After the competition, Marco can simply pass the leadership to him. It's not a big deal. If the guild wins this competition, they can recruit many strong mages, and they won't need to do this again next year. If he progresses quickly enough, he might even solve the fairy ball problem by next year, and when Natsu and the others return, they won't have to worry about the competition anymore. Huh? Marco was stunned, only relaxing after hearing George's explanation. I see, that's a good idea. He didn't think George alone could lead Fairy Tail to first place in this competition. After all, while George was an S-class mage, other guilds had many S-class mages as well. Moreover, the competition was in groups of 5, and the other 4 probably wouldn't be of much help and might even hinder George. But at least they wouldn't be at the bottom. They should be able to rank in the upper middle range. Reaching an upper middle range would be quite good, letting everyone know that Fairy Tail's strength wasn't bad, which would increase their mission list next year. Alright, as the new guild leader, you go and register with the mayor on behalf of the guild. Then, tell everyone to gather in 2 hours. I'll select the remaining 4 participants. With everything settled, George waved his cat paw, dismissing Mikhail, and returned to his interrupted magical research. He didn't have any particular thoughts about the remaining 4 participants. They wouldn't be of much help to him anyway, and he'd have to lead them to success himself. Chapter 357 Crocus, the City of 100 Flowers. That's all? Most people are realistic. As expected, George sighed inwardly, looking at the 20-odd mages gathered in the guild hall. The guild used to have over 100 mages, and even after the Tenrau Island incident, there were still nearly 100. Now, less than 30 remained. Macau should have already told you everything. To restore Fairy Tale's prestige, I've decided to participate in the Kingdom's Grand Magician Tournament. 5 people are needed to register. Besides me, who else wants to participate? George's words were met with silence. Not a single person volunteered. Back when Natsu and the others were around, everyone was constantly fighting, the hall often collapsing from the fighting. No one was willing to concede. It was quite a spectacle. If a Grand Magician tournament had come up back then, they probably would have fought amongst themselves for the 5 spots. However, now, because of the Tenrau Island incident, because of the changes in the guild recently, fewer missions, more companions leaving, everyone had lost confidence. They felt that with their own strength, participating would only hold George back. If Natsu and the others find out you're like this, they'll laugh themselves to death. You don't even have the courage to sign up for the tournament. George understood everyone's feelings and deliberately provoked them. Guildmaster, is it really possible for Levy and the others to come back? Sarusuk, Levy's #1 follower, looked haggard in the Lane Engine squad. Although George said that Levy and the others might be trapped in fairy sphere magic and not actually killed by the Black Dragon, to be honest, they weren't sure. First, no one could verify the accuracy of George's judgment. Second, fairy sphere, as one of Fairy Tale's 3 great super magics, hadn't been mastered by anyone since the first guild master developed it. Could George really break it? Third, George had been staying in the basement for so long without coming out or telling them about the progress. Was everything he said before just to comfort them? It was precisely because of these 3 points that rumors were spreading in the guild. Everyone felt that the people from Tenrau Island might not return, which is why they gradually left the guild. People like Sarusuk and Dierl, having lost both their friends and their lovers, were so dejected that they spent all their time at the guild and refused to take on any more quests. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I've made some initial progress in my research on fairy spheres. It will take at least 2 or 3 years, maybe a year or 2, to master it. And based on my current understanding of fairy spheres, I can assure you that Natsu and the others are safe. They're protected by them. George sat at the bar, poured himself a drink, and smiled at everyone. I'm telling you all, you don't want the old guild master and the others to come back and see the guild like this after I've mastered fairy spheres, do you? He wasn't just trying to comfort them. After so much research, he had indeed made some initial progress. If things progressed according to plan, he could definitely master fairy spheres completely in 3 years. And if he had other time magic to assist his research during that time, such as the time cards from the Cardcaptor Sakura world, or if he discovered time magic in a new world, then shortening the time to 1 or 2 years would be normal. Really? Hearing George's affirmative answer, everyone present immediately became excited. Of course it's true, so even if Natsu and the others aren't here, we can't let down the guild's reputation. George raised his hand, extending his catpaw and striking the signature fairy tale pose. We want to tell everyone in the kingdom what we are. We are Fairy Tale. Everyone simultaneously raised their right hands, striking the same pose and shouting. After regaining their momentum, everyone began to eagerly sign up. George then picked a few taller people from among the shorter ones. They were Marcus, who was skilled in sand magic, the couple Alzak and Biska, who were skilled in gun magic, and finally, Rachel, who was skilled in wood-firing magic. A week later, at the entrance of the Fairy Tale Guild, Marcel looked at all the fully armed guild members, scratched his head, and said to George, "Guild Master, isn't it a bit much if we all go? We should leave a few people to guard the guild. What if something happens here?" The current Fairy Tale Guild was built using the former Ghost's moving castle, a priceless property, not an ordinary house. He was worried that if they all left, the guild might be stolen. "I told you, from now on you're the guild master, don't call yourself guild master anymore, or it'll be troublesome if you get caught," George reminded him, explaining, "It's alright, the guild will be fine, because I plan to take the guild with me." Following Macau's advice, leaving a few mages to guard the guild was completely unnecessary. If someone tried to steal the guild, the remaining mages would basically be easy prey. But he wouldn't really abandon the guild, not to mention the priceless moving castle, more importantly the spellbooks in the castle's basement and the sealed meteor shower. So, simply put, he planned to take both basements of the entire guild with him, that way he wouldn't have to worry. Take the guild with you. Macau and the other fairy tale mages were stunned. Did George plan to activate the guild and directly open the guild district of the kingdom's capital? That would be impossible to enter, wouldn't it? Yes, take it all with us. We'll bring it back when we return. George took out a small box from his changing space, opened it, and then told everyone to step back while he began to silently chant a mountain-moving spell. Under the effect of the ancient magic mountain-moving spell, the entire guild, along with a large area of ground below, was lifted up and sent into the box, which had been enchanted with a seamless expansion spell. With his current level of seamless expansion spell, a space the size of a briefcase could be expanded to fit a city. So simply taking a guild was too easy for him. Guildmaster, as expected of you, at this moment, everyone remembered the scene when George moved an entire mountain into a lake to create an island for the fairy tale magic tournament, and remembered how George led them to victory against their enemies time and time again. They regained their confidence in this tournament. Perhaps, they weren't just going there for a mediocre ranking. With George leading the team, becoming the strongest mage guild wasn't impossible. When Natsu and the others returned and found out that their guild, thanks to George and their efforts, had won first place in the Grand Magic Games and become the true strongest mage guild in the kingdom, they would definitely be incredibly envious. Let's go, Crocus, the city of flowers. George used his superpowers to draw iron sands from the ground, condensing it into a black cloud that carried all the guild's mages towards the kingdom's capital. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358. The competition begins. Is this the city of flowers? It's huge, sitting atop the black clouds formed from iron sand, the guild mages exclaimed in amazement at the enormous city that appeared before them. The city of flowers, Crocus, was located at the easternmost edge of the kingdom, and was its most prosperous and largest city. Compared to Magnolia City, Crocus was dozens of times larger. The most prominent feature was the Melchius Palace in the city center, a magnificent, golden royal palace. George didn't land directly into the city with the guild members, but instead landed at the city entrance. According to the rules of the Grand Magus Tournament, they had to register at the city entrance first so that the royal family would arrange accommodations for them. It really is the city of flowers. After Macau, as the guild leader, registered, the group smoothly entered the city. The entire city, just like its name, was filled with different kinds of flowers. Along the streets, in front of houses, on walls, and on rooftops, the people of this city clearly loved flowers. Many wore headdresses adorned with various floral designs. Street performers even used plant-based magic to create blooming flowers. The Grand Magician's Tournament had created a vibrant atmosphere, drawing crowds from other cities and even kingdoms, far more than the previous Harvest Festival in Magnolia City. It was also evident that many mages possessed considerable magical power, and like the participants, they were members of various guilds sent to compete. The 5 participants had designated inns, while non-participants had to find their own accommodations nearby. This was no problem for the guilds. George simply waved his paw and found the best inns for his guild's mages. Fairy Tale had once been poor, but things had gradually improved since George's arrival. Although missions had decreased significantly, and many remaining mages were reluctant to take on missions due to setbacks, the foundation was still there. The night of their arrival was peaceful, without any unexpected incidents. This was mainly because while Fairy Tale was incredibly famous in the kingdom, the mages representing the Fairy Tale Guild weren't well known. People recognized Makarov of the 10 Wizard Saints, Mira Jane the Cover Girl, Urza the Fairy Queen, and Natsu the Fire Dragon, but they were all still in the fairy sphere on Tenrao Island. George rarely left the guild to take on missions, he only teleported over to do cleanup work after everyone else's missions were finished. He gained some fame during the Harvest Festival, but his cat-like appearance meant that, without him speaking, most people wouldn't recognize him. Therefore, without them publicizing it, the other participating guild mages had no idea that their team of 4 people and 1 cat represented the once-renowned Fairy Tale. They assumed they were some unknown guild. Keep in mind, over 100 guilds had registered for this event, many of them newly established guilds hoping to make a name for themselves. Some mages, upon learning of the Grand Magic Tournament, hastily formed small guilds and registered just to participate. The following morning, The royal family sent representatives to the hotels where the participating guilds were staying. All participants, please follow me. Our first match this morning will be held at the main arena, Dom's Flowood, on the stone mountain to the east of the city. Dom's Flowood was specially built by His Majesty the King at great expense for this grand magic tournament, a sweet-looking receptionist explained to the mages, pointing to a structure resembling a Roman Colosseum. The Dom's Flowood arena was indeed vast and magnificent. A stone giant wielding a giant sword stood on each of the four sides of the circular arena, and various monster reliefs adorned the outer walls. What's the first match? Is it a free-for-all in that arena? A mage asked the receptionist loudly, and the other mages perked up their ears. The receptionist shook her head upon hearing this. I'm sorry, I don't know either. The specific details of the competition will be announced by the host when you arrive at the arena. Everyone seems so strong. I wonder if we can do it. Leaky, wearing a red bow in her hair, muttered worriedly, sensing the powerful magic emanating from the mages of the other guilds around her. Marcus, who loved to talk, immediately comforted her. Don't worry, we're not weak either. Besides, we have the guild leader. Be careful. George said we can't call him guild leader here. The guild leader is Markeo now. If the royal family finds out, they'll think we're cheating, and that'll be troublesome, Biska and Alzak quickly reminded them. The four nodded and then looked at George, who was leaning on Leaky's shoulder as if asleep. The guild's final ranking depended on George. The four of them were mainly there to make up the numbers. At this moment, George wasn't actually sleeping. He had just made some breakthroughs in his research on the fairy sphere last night, so he was now consolidating his research with his eyes closed. Anyway, there wasn't anything urgent before the official competition, and besides, he had left a sliver of his mental energy outside, so he could handle anything that might happen. As they entered the massive competition venue led by the receptionist, they heard bursts of cheers. The huge venue was already packed with spectators. Every time a receptionist led a participating mage into the arena, the spectators would stand up and shout their favorite mage, cheering them on. Famous mages in this world, just like idols in the real world, have a large number of fans who admire and love them. Someone like Mary Jane, who appears on the cover of magazines every issue, has an impact on ordinary people that is no less than that of a top idol. It is said that even Natsu was once impersonated by someone using the name of Fire Dragon to lure a large number of naive girls in some cities. Lucy, who initially wanted to join Fairy Tail, was even deceived by that imposter. There are quite a lot of people. At this moment, George finally opened his eyes and stood up from Rachel's shoulder. He glanced around and saw Macau and his guild members in the third row of the audience. They were all cheering with all their might for the four people and the cat, but unfortunately, they couldn't compete with the other spectators below and couldn't hear him at all. The names that were being shouted the loudest were, Jur Regis, a wizard of the 10 from the Boasuzaku Guild, Hibiki, Ren, and Ivan, 3 handsome wizards from the Blue Pegasus Guild, and Jenny Lilite, ranked second in the Magic Weekly's Ideal Wizard Girlfriend list, among others. Chapter 359 Mechanical Magic Monster. Good morning, everyone. I'm Abba, and it's an honor to host the first Grand Magic Martial Arts Tournament. On behalf of the kingdom, I welcome you all. As the voice of the magical microphone resounded throughout the venue, the grand event officially began. Let's first introduce our special guests. They are Mr. Yajima, former member of the Magic Council, and Mr. Lahar, the current captain of the 4th Forced Supervision Unit of the Magic Council and Grand Master of the Rune Knights. On the stage, next to the golden-faced host, Yajima, who had become a chef, and Lahar, wearing glasses and the Magic Council uniform, simultaneously stood up and waved to the audience. After the two were seated, the host continued, there are a total of 101 teams participating in this tournament, each from one of the kingdom's 101 mage guilds. These guilds are, Boa Hancock Scale, Blue Pegasus, Mermaid Heel, Four-Headed Hound, Saberby Tiger, Snake Demon Fin, Giant's Nose, Headless Horseman, Earth Spirit Wheel, Poison Demon Fang, and Fairy Tail. When the earlier guilds were announced, especially major guilds like Boa Hancock Scale and Blue Pegasus, which were already on par with Fairy Tail, the audience erupted in applause and cheers. When smaller, lesser-known guilds like Headless Horseman and Earth Spirit Wheel were announced, there was some scattered applause. But when Fairy Tail was announced, the entire hall suddenly fell silent, and all eyes turned to George and his companions, including those from other nearby guilds. Then, various whispers and murmurs arose. Did they say that all the main members of Fairy Tail disappeared at sea and haven't been found yet? What? I heard that all the main members are dead. I heard that the entire guild is dead. I didn't expect there would be mages participating. Are these the fairy tale mages participating? I don't recognize any of them. As the kingdom's most powerful mage guild, Fairy Tail often creates big news events, so everyone has naturally heard about them. Similarly, the news of Fairy Tail's main members disappearing on Tenrao Island, which broke a few months ago, also caused a sensation throughout the kingdom. However, the audience and other participating mage guilds didn't expect Fairy Tail to participate in this Grand Magician's tournament under such circumstances. Because it was destined to be a poor result, needlessly shaming the once strongest mage guild, it was better to stay put and at least leave some good memories. Among them, quite a few participating mage guilds looked at George's group of 4 and a cat with malicious smiles. Some were mage guilds that had previously had a bad relationship with Fairy Tail, while others were guilds hoping to use this opportunity to step on Fairy Tail and gain some vanity. As the former strongest mage guild, it was inevitable that there would be some friction with other guilds. In the past, their strength was sufficient, so it didn't matter, but now that they were down on their luck, these vicious dogs wanted to kick them while they were down. Of course, there were also guilds like Blue Pegasus and Snake Princess Scale, who were on good terms with Fairy Tail and still waved amicably. Similarly, there were a few die-hard Fairy Tail fans in the stands who cheered and shouted after learning that they were representing Fairy Tail. However, because their numbers were small, it didn't stand out. After all 101 participating guilds had been announced, the host took a sip of water to moisten his throat and continued, "Next, please welcome our mascot, Mr. Pumpkin, to explain the rules of this competition." As his voice fell, a short figure wearing a pumpkin decoration jumped onto the stage and stood in front of the 101 participating teams. His magical image was also magnified and projected into the air, allowing all the spectators in the venue to see it. This grand magic tournament will last 4 days, 1 match per day, for a total of 4 matches. The first match is the preliminary round. Only teams that pass the preliminary round will qualify for the official tournament. The official tournament is divided into individual matches, team matches, and a free-for-all, ranked by points. The team with the highest final score will receive the kingdom's strongest guild trophy and a prize of 30 million. The Pumpkin Man paused here before continuing. Today we're holding the preliminary round. The rules are simple. We will soon release magical monsters created by the kingdom's Magic Development Bureau. These monsters are very powerful. Even S-rank mages will have a hard time defeating them. The preliminary round involves each team of 5 players teaming up to fight one magical monster. Those who defeat the monster will advance to the official tournament, otherwise, they will be eliminated. Magical monsters, the participating mages and spectators below all showed expressions of confusion. To make it easier for everyone to understand, Pumpkin waved his hand, and a magical image appeared above the venue, showing a mechanical magical gorilla over 10 meters tall. In the image, the gorilla charged at incredible speed, smashing the building in front of it to pieces, then leaped dozens of meters before landing, punching the ground and creating a large crack. Finally, the mechanical magical gorilla opened its mouth, a magic circle formed, and terrifying flames erupted. So powerful, the gorilla's destructive power displayed in the image immediately caused the audience to gasp in surprise, while some of the participating mages in the arena below broke out in a cold sweat. This included the 4 members of Fairy Tail, including Mickey and her group. To be honest, even with their combined strength, the 4 of them might not be able to defeat this gorilla. Alzaka and Biska, using dual pistols and a sniper rifle, were fast and had a long range, but their destructive power was weak. Even if every shot hit, they probably wouldn't be able to break through the mechanical defenses of the over 10-meter tall gorilla. Marcus, wielding sand magic, was practically useless. It was like scraping a stalk. Rachel's wood-shaped magic wasn't known for its destructive power either. If the 4 of them teamed up against mages from other guilds, their combined strength wouldn't be bad. But against the incredibly strong mechanical gorilla, they were utterly powerless. "Don't worry, it's just for show," George said, perched on Rachel's shoulder, casually waving his paw. In his opinion, the mechanical gorilla looked intimidating, but it was nothing special. Its overall strength was far below that of an S-class mage, even though subpar S-class mages outside the Fairy Tail Guild wouldn't pose much of a threat. And for him, it was utterly posed no threat whatsoever. Chapter 360 each displays their unique abilities. Now, we will divide the 101 teams into 10 groups. Each group will have 10 teams fighting against a mechanical magical monsters, with the last group consisting of 11 teams. Guilds whose names are heard, please proceed to the center of the arena. The rest of the teams, please wait in the back. After explaining the rules, the Pumpkin Man took out a piece of paper from his pocket and began calling out. First group, Crocodile Skin, Werewolf Claws, Wild Boar Tusks, 50 contestants from 10 magical guilds, upon hearing their guild's name, proceeded to the center of the arena. Simultaneously, 10 enormous magic circles rose opposite them, and 10 mechanical magical gorillas slowly emerged from within the circles, roaring terrifyingly. Many mages couldn't help but swallow hard at the sight. After the mechanical magical gorillas appeared, new magic circles lit up again, and 10 houses made of cast iron emerged from the magic circles, housing the gorillas. Immediately afterwards, 10 magical projections appeared in the sky above the arena, showing the scenes inside each of the iron houses. Teams in the first group, please each choose a house to enter. If you cannot defeat our magical monsters, you may choose to leave the room or simply shout "I give up." We are not responsible for any accidental deaths that occur if you insist on not giving up. Amidst the loud cheers of the audience, the 10 teams each chose the house closest to them and entered. Once all the teams were inside, the Pumpkin Man waved to the host, who picked up the magic microphone and shouted, "The first Grand Magic Martial Arts Preliminary Tournament now officially begins." As the host's voice faded, the mechanical magical gorillas in the projected houses immediately launched a furious attack on the mages who had entered the rooms. The mages formed a defensive battle formation and began releasing their magic for defense and counterattack. Various types of magic erupted in the rooms, looking incredibly magnificent and spectacular. Many of these spells were unlike anything George, who had read through the entire fairy tale library, had never seen before. Examples included magic that manipulated musical notes and sound waves, magic that clung to enemies like spider silk, magic that sprayed slime from the mouth, and magic that used the tongue as a whip, among others. Many spells are no longer of much use to George now. He can even grasp the basic principles and replicate them with just a glance. However, to be honest, it still allowed him to witness the diversity of magic. It just goes to show that in this world where magic is the dominant theme, the types and applications of magic are constantly evolving. The mechanical magic gorilla poses no threat to George, but it's still a terrifying monster for most mages. Of the first group of 10 teams, only one managed to defeat a mechanical magic gorilla. The other 9 either surrendered because they couldn't fight them anymore, or all 5 members were knocked unconscious. Those mechanical magic gorillas were clearly being remotely controlled by mages and wouldn't actually kill the participating teams. The Pumpkin Man's earlier words were just scare tactics to create atmosphere. However, this also gave the audience a more realistic understanding of the mechanical magic gorilla's power. Now, please enter the second group, Azure Pegasus, Black Panther, and Mad Lion's Mane. This group was clearly much stronger than the first, with 3 teams successfully advancing, among which Azure Pegasus stood out the most. Of the 5 members of Azure Pegasus, neither the leader, One Knight, nor the highly popular cover girl, Jenny, participated. The remaining 3 handsome men easily defeated the mechanical magic gorilla. They didn't do this to show off, but as a battle strategy, to defeat the mechanical magic gorilla without revealing the strength of their top mages, making the later battles easier. In battles between mages, when the strength difference isn't too great, intelligence gathering is crucial. Sometimes, knowing the opponent's information beforehand and developing a targeted battle strategy can lead to a swift and decisive victory, even with similar strength. The first Grand Magic Martial Arts Tournament will undoubtedly be filled with top-tier fighters, perhaps even including the 10 Wizard Saints. It's natural to minimize exposure before the official competition. Besides Azure Pegasus, several other strong teams shared this mindset. Like Boa Hancock's Gale, which only sent out the puppet mage Sherry Brandy, who fought for half an hour by constantly summoning stone giants and tree giants, finally winning only when the mechanical mage gorilla ran out of magic power. The other 4 mages watched the whole thing without revealing any of their abilities. From morning until evening, the teams from various mage guilds displayed their unique skills, and the cheers in the arena never stopped. Ordinary people could never see such a wonderful battle. Now, please enter the 9th team, Fairy Tale. Finally, when the list of the 9th team was announced, the name of Fairy Tale appeared. Most of the audience members turned their attention to the 4 people and the cat in the arena when they heard the name Fairy Tale. Some were looking forward to seeing the former strongest guild make a fool of itself, Some were simply curious, and a very few die-hard fans hoped that Fairy Tail could fight their way out even without their main force. Many of these die-hard fans had actually attended the Harvest Festival a few months ago and watched the Fairy Tail First Mage Tournament. They knew that even if the other four weren't up to par, there was still the cat who had defeated Axis and definitely possessed S-class mage strength. "It's our turn." George spread his wings and flew off Rachel's shoulder, leading the somewhat nervous four towards the nearest house. Seeing that the audience's attention was focused on the four Fairy Tail members and the cat, the host opportunely turned the conversation to the two special guests beside him. As everyone knows, Fairy Tail was once one of the strongest guilds in the kingdom, but their former guild master and key members disappeared along with Tenrau Island. Do you two think that the members participating now have a chance to pass the preliminaries? Well, you probably don't know that not all of Fairy Tail's key members disappeared because of the Tenrau Island incident. I believe that even if they can't win first place this time, passing the preliminaries shouldn't be a problem. Yajima adjusted his chef's hat, his tone very confident. As a former Fairy Tail mage, he visited the guild immediately after the Tenrau Island incident. Although he only saw Macau, he knew that George was focused on breaking the fairy sphere in preparation for rescuing Makarov and the others who were trapped. Chapter 361 Instant Fame. Mr. Yajima and I share the same opinion, Lahar nodded. Although he hadn't met George, he had seen some general information about the cat George in the new Magic Council. The information gave George a high evaluation of his strength, judging that he might already be close to the level of a wizard of 10 with such strength. Dealing with a mechanical gorilla below shouldn't be a problem. It seems that you two still have high hopes for Fairy Tail Guild. We also wish them success in advancing and a better performance in the official matches. The host nodded and then announced the start of the 9th preliminary match of the day. Inside the steel room, Alzak looked at the mechanical gorilla gradually standing up in front of him and rationally suggested to George, "George, why don't we handle this one? You should try to conserve your strength." The other slightly stronger guilds had all tried to conserve their strength in the preliminary matches so that they wouldn't be easily targeted in the later official matches. How far Fairy Tail Guild would rank this time still depended on George's performance. The other four could only play a supporting role. So if the four of them could fight their way down this mechanical magic gorilla, George would be on equal footing with the other guild's top fighters, avoiding being targeted after his magic was figured out. There's no need for that. True powerhouses aren't afraid of being targeted. I'll handle this guy. You four conserve your strength for tomorrow's individual set-in. George shook his cat head, looking at the charging mechanical magic gorilla, and took out a silver coin from his changing space, then flicked it lightly. Targeted? He wasn't afraid. He was a well-rounded mage, not like most mages in this world who only focused on one or two types of magic. Whether it was elemental magic or magic involving melee combat, the physical body, or the soul, he was proficient in most of them. With equal strength, he was the one targeting others. Moreover, targeting was only effective when the strength difference was small. If the difference was too great, targeting wouldn't work. Just like water can extinguish fire, but if the fire is hot enough, it can also evaporate the water. Of all the participating mages he had sensed so far, none gave him the feeling of needing to take them seriously like he did against Soren. So there was no need to make things so messy at the beginning, exhausting the four of them and leaving them battered and bruised just to hide their strength. Even if they scored the highest in the end, it wouldn't feel as satisfying. What he wanted was a victory that was exhilarating from start to finish, a victory that made all the spectators and mages feel that Fairy Tail was strong and powerful, invincible even without most of their main force. This was the only way to attract more excellent mages to join the guild after the competition, and to attract more wealthy people to give the guild missions. Railgun, over 1 billion volts of voltage erupted from George's body, and with a slight tap towards the falling silver coin, the coin instantly transformed into a terrifying railgun and shot out. Boom, a loud bang. The mechanical magic gorilla, which had only run halfway, crashed to the ground. A hole twice the size of a basketball appeared in its chest. Instant kill. Before the four of them could even react to George's words, they found that the battle was over. Looking at the fallen mechanical magic gorilla, they stammered. They knew George was strong. After all, he was Fairy Tail's strongest mage who had defeated Laxus. But they never expected George to instantly kill the nearest class magical monster that had caused so many participating teams to suffer defeats. The key was that it looked so easy, as simple as swatting a fly. Alright, let's prepare for the official match. George returned to Leaky's shoulder, closed his eyes again, and continued studying his fairy ball magic in his mind. In his eyes, this Grand Magus tournament was utterly unchallenging, and the preliminaries were even less so. He didn't even need to use magic, with his superpowers now surpassing Misaka Mikado's. A single railgun shot could easily wipe out any ordinary S-class mage in this world, except for Fairy Tail. If it weren't for the development of the guild, he wouldn't have bothered participating. The only opponents he cared about in this world were the 5 divine dragons of the northern continent and that world-destroying black dragon. When George led Leaky and the other 3 out of the steel room, the audience outside hadn't even reacted yet, staring at the screen with jaws practically dropping. Even the most popular guilds, even those sending just one mage, would take a considerable amount of time to defeat the mechanical gorilla. But Fairy Tail, sending only a cat, instantly killed the mechanical gorilla. This contrast was truly astonishing. In fact, most of the audience in the stands were ordinary people. While they knew about mages and magic, they didn't have a deep understanding. Many knew Fairy Tail because of the destructive antics its mages caused during missions and because they'd seen Mary Jane's sexy magazine covers. Aside from die-hard fans and residents of Magnolia City, most people didn't know who George was. Seeing that the seemingly least favored Fairy Tail guild, the 4 members and 1 cat, had unleashed such powerful magic, instantly killing the terrifying mechanical gorilla, was incredibly shocking. Fairy Tail, Nyanko, Nyanko. Upon realizing what was happening, thunderous applause and cheers erupted throughout the venue. George became an overnight sensation, truly entering the eyes of all the mages and ordinary people in the kingdom. Fairy Tail's strongest mage, an opponent Evangelo acknowledges. It seems getting first place as a guild won't be easy this time, Jura of Boa Princess Scale remarked with a compassionate expression, his hands clasped together. He had witnessed Jelil's strength during the battle against the Awakens, a collaboration between Boa Princess Scale, Blue Pegasus, and Fairy Tail. He was no weaker than himself, another member of the Awakens. So he's the cat Lucy always talked about. The 3 handsome members of Blue Pegasus remembered that when they were ambushed and at a disadvantage by the Awakens, Lucy had said that if George hadn't been on the 100 Years mission, they wouldn't have been ambushed. Similarly, the mages from other guilds, watching the 4 humans and the cat return to their original positions, began to discuss among themselves. Their focus now shifted not only to the mages from the popular guilds, but also to the cat from Fairy Tail. I didn't expect mage guilds to be so weak these days. Defeating that trash in one move is enough to surprise so many. Oga, you'll handle that trash alone in a bit. Let everyone know that Saber Tiger is the strongest mage guild in the kingdom. However, just as George and the cat returned to their positions, an extremely arrogant voice echoed throughout the hall. Everyone turned to look, and it was the voice of a robust old man with a black hat, a guild crest etched on his forehead, Buddhist prayer beads around his neck, and white hair and beard. The muscular man next to him, wearing a tiger skin skirt and shirtless, shouted back, "Don't worry, I'll show them what the strongest lightning magic is." Sword by Tiger, never heard of this guild before, how come they're so arrogant? Hearing their conversation, the surrounding mages began to murmur amongst themselves. One knowledgeable mage explained, "You guys don't know this, do you? Sword by Tiger was originally just an unknown small guild, but in the last few months, 5 mages suddenly joined, and that's how they became famous. It's said that each of the 5 new mages has the strength of an S-rank mage." Chapter 362 Alchemist George. 5 S-rank, everyone gasped in astonishment. 5 S-rank mages, that was a scale only top-tier mage guilds possessed. Back in the day, Phantom Lord, who could rival Fairy Tail, only had 5 S-rank mages besides their guild master. 4 elemental mages plus Iron Dragon Slayer. The 9th group finished, and Fairy Tail had 3 guilds teams advance. Now, let's invite the last group to the stage. Saber by Tiger. After the host announced the names, the last 11 teams stepped forward and entered the nearest steel room. God-slaying magic, black lightning cannon. The moment the door closed, the battle in Saber by Tiger's room, projected in magic, was already over. The Saber by Tiger mage named Oga had unleashed wrist-thick black lightning bolts from his hands, instantly piercing through the mechanical ape, killing it instantly as well. Saber by Tiger, Saber by Tiger. Cheers erupted in the arena for Saber by Tiger. At this moment, George opened his eyes. He wasn't surprised by Sabretooth's strength, If they were serious, many guilds could achieve that kind of instant kill. It was just a matter of whether they wanted to reveal it. What piqued his interest was the magic Oga used. It wasn't ordinary elemental magic. It's lost magic. Lost magic refers to magic that existed in ancient times but has now been lost to time. Dragon Slayer magic is actually considered lost magic, because before Natsu and the others appeared, no mage had used Dragon Slayer magic for a long time, and no spellbooks about it could be found. Oga's God Slayer magic is also a type of lost magic. Dragon Slayer magic has a special bonus against dragons, while God Slayer magic has a special bonus against gods. It is said that there is also a lost magic called Demon Slayer magic, which has a special bonus against demons. God Slayer, interesting. It seems I can read the memories when I have time. He has just touched the essence of lightning, and learning various lightning techniques can accelerate his understanding of the essence of lightning. He has already learned the ancient magic Thunderstorm Descent, which is formed by nature. Lightning formed through electromagnetism, a superpower of 1 billion volts. Lightning formed by the fusion of electromagnetism and magic, a plasma electromagnetic cannon. The Taoist Thunder Emperor summoning, specifically designed to counter evil spirits and dark forces. Later, when opportunities arise, they will learn the Thunder God slaying magic to counter gods, the Thunder Demon slaying magic to counter demons, and the Thunder Dragon slaying magic to counter dragons. Mastering all these different properties of lightning will bring them closer to understanding the essence of lightning and advancing to level 6. An hour later, the remaining 10 teams in Group 10 finished their battles, with 4 groups advancing. The mechanical magic guerrillas were quite strong, but the magician teams relied on 5-person teamwork and coordinated attacks. As long as the 5 members were of average strength, they could generally defeat them. Therefore, a total of 30 teams passed the preliminary rounds. Night fell, the first day of the competition ended, and George and the 4 participants, along with Mikau and the others, ate and chatted before returning to the royal-provided accommodations. Tomorrow is the individual competition. Although the rules haven't been explained yet. It'll definitely be a separate battle. George gathered the 4 of them in his room for a small meeting. The official competition uses a points system. Whether they can get the title of strongest mage depends on whether they rank first in points. If the other 4 lose their individual battles tomorrow, even if he wins, his points will probably be at the bottom. Guildmaster, we will definitely try our best to defeat our opponents and get points. The 4 of them put on expressions of determination. George had set such a good example, they couldn't let the 4 of them drag them down and cause them to fall behind in points. They were all secretly determined to fight to the death to defeat their opponents tomorrow and never admit defeat. Don't be so serious. It would be best if you could win, but it's okay if you can't. There are team battles and free-for-alls later to salvage the situation. George waved his cat paw. Of course, we can't give up easily. We still need to do sufficient preparation beforehand. What preparations? The 4 looked puzzled. Preparations that can improve your strength? George's cat mouth slightly raised. Besides using their own magic, mages can also use magical items in combat. There's even a major category called wielding mages, who specialize in using various magical items in battle. Lucy, a celestial spirit mage, is actually a wielding mage, as is the powerful Mistrigan. Coincidentally, George has been studying alchemy recently, both in the Harry Potter world and Middle-earth. Therefore, his alchemy skills can now be considered master level. Give me your guns. He first looked at Alzak and Biska, who used gun magic. Although Alzak and Biska didn't know what George was going to do, they still took out their sniper rifle and dual pistols. George picked up the 3 magical guns, examined them, and began modifying them with his cat-like claws. A moment later, he returned the dual pistols and sniper rifle to Alzak and Biska. I've increased the power of the magic bullets fired from my guns. You can try it out. With that, he and the 4 of them apparated to the wilderness outside the city. Alzak and Biska picked up their guns and began casting their most common spells at the small hill in front of them. Starfire Shot, Bullet Storm. The bullets fired from Alzak's dual pistols, carrying terrifying lightning, blasted away half of the hill. Meanwhile, Biska's sniper rifle bullets, after scattering, carried terrifying flames, blasting away the remaining half of the hill. Indeed, George had imbued Alzak and Biska's magic guns with his understanding of lightning and fire, imbuing their various magic bullets with the power of lightning and fire he had comprehended. Having adventured from the western continent to the eastern continent, the 2 had considerable combat experience, but their magic power was generally average, unlike Natsu and his group who could easily destroy half a city. If the destructive power of their gun magic were increased, fighting S-rank mages would be difficult, but dealing with mages below S-rank would be much more manageable. Wow, such destructive power! Seeing the small hill in front of them completely blasted down, Alzak and Bisca stared in disbelief at the magic guns in their hands. The power amplification was too strong. It's barely passable. George nodded, took out 2 wands from his changing space, and handed them to Marcus and Leaky. Use these when you cast spells in the future. Chapter 363 President, having you is our blessing. Magic in the Harry Potter world differs from magic in the fairy tale world, so the wands George made previously could only amplify Harry Potter magic, not fairy tale magic. However, as he created more clones, learned more magic from different worlds, and deepened his understanding of magic, his alchemy reached master level, and he recently solved this problem. The 2 wands he took out now were mass-produced wands he casually made while researching fairy spheres in the basement. The wand bodies were made of magical wood he condensed using the power of a wooden dragon, and the cores were his own hair. Normally, mages below S rank can increase the power of their magic tenfold when using his mass-produced wands. Even S rank mages can increase their magic power by at least 3 times when using these wands. He made 100 of these wands and planned to give 1 to each mage in the guild to enhance their strength. He had no idea about the Grand Magus Martial Arts Tournament before. So his original plan was to give each of the less powerful mages who remained loyal to the guild a magic gun after the mages who joined for the guild's strength left. This would increase the overall strength of the guild's mages, improve their mission efficiency, and quickly create a virtuous cycle. As for those like Alzak and Bisca who used magical tools but couldn't use wands, he could specially modify and enchant them to enhance their spellcasting power. What's this? Marcus and Leaky looked at the small wooden stick in their hands, their eyes filled with confusion. From the outside, it looked like a very ordinary wooden stick, the kind that would break easily. It's a magical amplification tool I made. You can try it out now, it will be very helpful in your battle tomorrow, George explained with a smile. Marcus and Leaky exchanged a glance, their faces immediately lighting up with excitement. They had been very envious of Alzak and Bisca's magic guns after the modification, seeing such a significant increase in power. Sand magic, sandstorm, wood shape, our love is eternal. Marcus and Lucky simultaneously raised their wands, unleashing their most proficient spells. Yellow and green magic circles unfolded from the tips of their wands, and a massive sandstorm and countless wooden feet appeared before them. After the spell ended, the once flat ground in front of them had become a huge crater. This kind of destructive power is more like the style of us fairy tale mages. George looked at the 2 dumbfounded people, nodded in satisfaction, and then used restoration magic to restore the hill and the crater to their original state, leading the 4 back to their dormitory. Don't worry, President, we'll definitely secure the points in the individual competition tomorrow. After recovering, the 4 were full of confidence for tomorrow's competition. However, George shook his head again. Just like that, it's not safe enough. He reached into his changing space and pulled out 4 large cloaks bearing the fairy tale emblem. He distributed the 4 cloaks to the 4 of them. Before tomorrow's battle, wear these 4 cloaks. Against ordinary opponents, your current strength shouldn't be a problem. But if you encounter opponents close to S-rank strength, or those with unusual magical effects, activate these cloaks. The 4 picked up the cloaks, blinked, and waited for George's explanation. George gestured for them to put them on and said, "Try channeling magic into them." The 4 obediently put on the cloaks and channeled magic into them. Instantly, all 4 became invisible, and they clearly felt themselves protected by a magical shield. Indeed, these were not ordinary cloaks, but magical cloaks created by George using alchemy. George had imbued the cloaks with the illusion charm and the ironclad charm. Channeling magic would put the wearer in an invisible and protected state. If they were truly outmatched in tomorrow's match, activating the magical cloaks and launching a sneak attack while invisible would offer a chance to turn the tide. This was also one of the magical items he originally planned to provide to every fairy tale mage, just like the mass-produced wands. "President, you're amazing." Removing their cloaks, the 4 looked at George with eyes full of admiration. They felt George was like a magician, a walking encyclopedia of magical gadgets. Having a president like him was such a blessing. "Finally, 1 box for each of you. If you still can't win even with your magic cloaks on, open this box." Just when the 4 thought it was over, George took out 4 small boxes from his transformation space and handed one to each of them. Opening the boxes, they found magical space boxes with an interior space the size of a football field, containing 25-meter-tall steel monsters. These steel monsters can't use magic, but their defense and attack are quite good. Once released, they will attack enemies according to your commands, making them decent support, George told the 4 the incantation he had set for controlling the steel monsters. These steel monsters were similar to the monsters placed in schools as guards in the Marvel Universe. They were magical puppets created using a combination of mimicry and transformation magic and spirit awakening spells. As for strength, it's not very useful to him now, but it's still very helpful to ordinary mages. Now, even if you encounter an S-rank mage, you'll have a fighting chance. After fully equipping the 4 of them, George couldn't help but sigh. S-rank mages vary in strength, and the 4 of them actually have a good chance of winning against an ordinary S-rank mage. However, it's hard to say. Mage battles are unpredictable, and unless the difference in strength is too great, no one can guarantee a win. It all depends on the situation. If they are unlucky enough to lose, it's not a big deal. There are still team battles and free-for-alls later. Besides, the number of S-rank mages in the 30 advancing teams isn't that many, so they probably won't encounter them in matchmaking. As long as it's below S rank, the 4 of them are guaranteed to win. Guildmaster, having you is truly your blessing. The 4 of them held the box in their hands, wishing they could pick George up and kiss him a few times. Get some sleep and recharge. Tomorrow they'll know that Fairy Tale will always be the strongest guild in the kingdom. George gave the 4 a final pep talk before returning to his room. As for Saberbyte's 5 S-rank mages, once they returned from the Grand Mage Tournament, he was going to train all 30 of the guild's remaining mages into S-rank fighters. Chapter 364. You and I are not on the same level. The second day of the Grand Magic Tournament took place in the same grand venue, once again packed with spectators. When the 30 teams of guild mages entered, the cheers from the stands were deafening. Compared to yesterday, when only Macau and the others from Fairy Tale were cheering, today nearly a quarter of the audience was cheering for them. This was all thanks to George's one-shot kill yesterday. Admiration for strength is in the nature of most humans. As long as you demonstrate enough power, you will not lack followers and admirers. After the host's opening remarks, the stage was handed over to the Pumpkin Man from yesterday. Now, please welcome our Mr. Pumpkin to introduce today's competition rules. The Pumpkin Man's magical projection appeared above the venue. Today we will be holding an individual competition. Through our magical system, battles will be randomly matched after excluding guild mages. The winner will earn 10 points for their guild, the loser 0 points, and a tie will result in each guild receiving 5 points. As the Pumpkin Man's magical projection descended, 10 magic circles lit up the entire venue, and 10 large circular arenas rose simultaneously. Note, loss is defined as the loss of combat ability or surrender. Killing someone will disqualify you from the competition, and your entire guild will be eliminated. This special magic circle is quite interesting. After the Grand Magic Games, perhaps I can visit the Royal Magic Development Bureau and the Royal Library. He noticed it yesterday. The magic circle at the venue could not only teleport items but also recall them. Actually, this world also has large-scale teleportation magic circles, which the Magic Council used before, but he didn't see any related spellbooks in Fairy Tale's library. He guessed it was because such large-scale teleportation magic circles were national strategic magic, monopolized by the royal family and the Magic Council, or perhaps their use was extremely demanding, such as consuming a lot of magic crystals. But even with the demanding conditions, he felt it was worth learning. He had already learned how to make portkeys, which could also be used for teleportation, although not for teleporting too many people at once. Learning from this large-scale teleportation magic circle might allow him to improve it. Moreover, the kingdom's Magic Development Bureau and the Royal Library were quite famous institutions, worth a visit. Perhaps he could even find some clues about time magic. Now, let's begin the first group draw. Pumpkin Man pointed to the large screen in the venue, where the names of 150 mages began to scroll rapidly. Stop. 10 seconds later, the names on the screen stopped scrolling, and the first group of contestants appeared one by one from top to bottom. And at the very front of the first group were Fairy Tale's George and Sabretooth's Olga. Seeing the two most outstanding mages from yesterday collide so spectacularly, the audience members all stood up excitedly. These two had both instantly defeated the terrifying mechanical ape yesterday, and both were lightning attribute mages, The battle was sure to be incredibly exciting. "There's definitely something fishy going on," George muttered to himself. What a coincidence. The two most outstanding contestants from yesterday immediately clashed today, and in the first group no less. Clearly, the royal family, the organizers, wanted to start with some heavyweight contestants to warm up the atmosphere of the competition. Just like those variety shows in my past life, to be entertaining, you need to design a script in advance and follow it. Otherwise, where would all those hilarious improvisational moments come from? The royal family is holding the first Grand Magic Tournament, naturally hoping to attract the attention of the entire nation and lay a good foundation for future events. So, there needs to be enough excitement. The so-called random draw is actually a behind-the-scenes operation. They'll arrange the matches in a way that will ignite the crowd. Otherwise, if they randomly pair powerful mages with average mages, resulting in instant kills, what's the point? Carefully observing the match list, George noticed that the mages on the list were roughly of similar skill levels. It was like top students versus top students, and weaker students versus weaker students. This way, there wouldn't be a situation where the score gap between the major guild teams widened too much after the individual competition, making the later two competitions predictable. Of course, it's also possible that the royal family wants to use this opportunity to have all the mages showcase their magic as much as possible, so they can secretly register them and gather intelligence. He always felt that there was something fishy about this Grand Magic Tournament. "Please, first group of contestants, come forward." The 19 chosen individuals and one cat stood on 10 separate arenas. "I never expected my opponent to be just a meerkat. I heard you defeated Laxus before." On the arena, Oga stood with his arms crossed, his face full of arrogance. George asked curiously, "You know Laxus?" "No, I just heard he's a mage who uses lightning dragon slayer magic and is very strong, but now it seems he's not that great. Otherwise how could he have lost to a cat?" Oga's face was full of disdain. Both were lost magic users, both were S rank, and he had always considered Laxus his rival, hoping to one day settle things with him and prove that he was the strongest lightning mage. Unfortunately, Laxus had actually lost to a cat and died at the hands of a dragon, which disappointed him greatly. "So you're not an acquaintance, that's good," George nodded upon hearing this. Oga frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." George spread his cat paws. If Oga were Laxus's friend, he wouldn't be able to go too far later. Since he wasn't, it didn't matter. The match begins. With the announcer's shout, two burly royal guards slammed the large gong on the stone statue. "It's your turn." Hearing the gong, Oga pointed at George. God-slaying magic, black lightning sphere. A huge black sphere instantly enveloped George's body, countless black lightning bolts flashing within it, all hurtling towards George. The audience gasped in surprise, holding their breath for George, especially some cat-loving girls. However, to their surprise, all the lightning bolts in the black sphere seemed to bounce off George as if they had encountered a mirror, none of them actually hitting him. "That's interesting." George raised his paw, and a burst of blue lightning enveloped the black lightning sphere, instantly shrinking and condensing it between his paws. The black lightning ball did indeed contain special power, much stronger than normal lightning, but this level of lightning posed no threat to him, who had already come into contact with the essence of lightning. "You and I are not even on the same level, and you are even somewhat inferior to Laxus." With a flick of its paw, the blue lightning ball wrapped in black lightning was instantly sent flying in front of Oga. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365. The magic is good, but the person is too weak. What? Seeing the lightning ball bounce back, Oga's expression changed, and he immediately opened his mouth and swallowed it whole. Like Dragon Slayer magic, God-slaying magic can absorb elemental magic of the same attribute. The black lightning ball was enveloped in sign lightning. He only needed to consume the sign lightning to neutralize the attack. "Stop talking big. Let me show you what lightning that can kill even gods is." After swallowing the sign lightning ball, Oga covered his entire body with black lightning, transforming into a black bolt of lightning as he charged towards George. His fist, twice the size of George's body, wrapped in jet black lightning, seemed capable of piercing the entire earth. God-slaying magic, thunder strike, get lost. Seeing the fist about to strike, George didn't move an inch. However, His golden tail suddenly swelled to be thicker than a pillar, crackling with cyan lightning, and lashed out like a whip at Oga's bear-like body first. He had used giant magic to partially enlarge his tail and then amplified its power and speed with lightning. Oga's fist was less than a centimeter away from George when George was sent flying as if hit by a train, crashing heavily into the stone wall of the arena outside the ring and spitting out a mouthful of blood. I told you we're not on the same level, but you didn't believe me. I didn't even use my full strength, and you're already down. Just admit defeat already. George retracted his tail, tucked his paws behind his back, and looked like a grandmaster. The commotion immediately attracted the attention of all the spectators. Even the battles between the mages and the other rings on both sides temporarily stopped, and everyone looked towards the ring in the middle. You have to know, Oga is an S-class mage. He defeated the mechanical Magus Gorilla with a single move in the preliminaries. Even the mages of several top guilds acknowledge and respect Oga's strength. Originally, it was thought to be a fierce battle, but unexpectedly, the cat George only used his tail, and Oga was down. He didn't even use any powerful magic. Isn't the difference in strength a bit too great? You've truly angered me. Even if it might kill you and disqualify me from the competition, I won't hold back anymore. Oga shakily stood up again, spitting out blood, and gathered all the magic power in his body into his palms. This is a technique I haven't fully mastered yet, so I can't control its power. Don't blame me if you die. With a roar, a black magic circle appeared, and a massive black lightning pillar, as thick as a water tank, hurtled towards George. God-slaying magic, Thunder God's lightning particle cannon. Hell, this magic is somewhat decent. I can make something similar too. Seeing the black lightning pillar approaching, George pulled with his cat paw, and lightning energy that made all the mages present tremble condense in his hand. Ordinary magic, plasma electromagnetic cannon. A cyan lightning pillar shot out from George's cat paw, colliding instantly with the incoming black lightning pillar. Unfortunately, one lightning pillar solidified almost like a physical entity, while the other barely took shape. The stalemate lasted less than a second before the cyan lightning pillar shattered the black lightning pillar, striking Oga directly in the chest and sending him flying again. This time, Oga's entire body was propelled through the 3-meter-thick specially made magic stone wall of the arena by the cyan lightning pillar before finally stopping. My lightning is the lightning of annihilation. How could it lose to ordinary lightning? Tears of resentment streamed down Oga's face as he was severely injured and passed out. The magic is good, but you're just too weak. Before Oga fainted, George added insult to injury. If they were of equal strength, Oga's black lightning would naturally be stronger, but the difference in strength between the two was too great. Even if George only used ordinary lightning, the sheer size of the lightning made it easy to overwhelm his opponent. It's like soldiers with similar physical abilities. The armored soldier is definitely stronger than the unarmored soldier, but when the armored soldier encounters 100 unarmored soldiers, he will be easily defeated. Our first winner in the first group match has emerged. Fairy Tales George vs Sabertooth's Oga. Fairy Tales George wins. Fairy Tale Guild scores 10 points. After a moment of stunned silence, the announcer's excited voice rang out in the arena, and the audience erupted in cheers once more. Fairy Tale, what a disgrace to our guild. Losers don't deserve to stay in my guild. Below the arena, Sabertooth's leader, the burly elder named Germain, had veins bulging on his face and exuded a powerful aura. To participate in this grand magic games and make his guild famous and advance to the top tier, he hadn't taken over as guild leader after merging Sabertooth. But he never expected to suffer such a humiliating defeat in the very first match of the official tournament. After all, it was once the strongest mage guild, but there's only one of them. Their final total score will inevitably be lower than ours, so we don't need to pay too much attention to them. Our focus should be on guilds like Blue Pegasus, Mermaid's Heel, and Snake Princess Scale. They are our true rivals in the battle for the strongest guild. As for Oga, we still need his strength in the later matches. Father, please be patient and let him redeem himself. Beside Germain, a woman dressed in a cheongsam and holding a fan, resembling a noblewoman, spoke up to persuade him. The enraged Germain, after hearing the woman's words, pondered for a moment before barely suppressing his anger and nodding. Minerva, do as you say. Send him back for treatment first. Absolute territory, spatial transfer. Minerva activated her spatial magic, and the heavily injured and unconscious Oga vanished from his spot, teleported to the medical room at the back of the arena. George flew down from the arena, landing on Leaky's shoulder. Seeing Olga teleported away, he turned to look at Minerva of Sabrabide. Rare special magic, capable of teleportation. It seems there are many spells outside that I don't understand. He can upright and teleport, and can also teleport people, but it requires physical contact. Teleporting someone to another location from a distance is truly impossible. A considerable amount of time passed before the matches on the other 9 arenas gradually came to an end. These arenas grouped mages of similar strength together, so the battles weren't like as against Olga, which ended in a few moves. Instead, they were fiercely contested. One pair was so evenly matched that they fought until their magic was exhausted, with a winner emerging slightly stronger through sheer hand-to-hand combat. This made for a very exciting spectacle for the audience. Chapter 366 Consecutive Victories. The first group finished, and the second group took the stage. This group didn't include any Fairy Tale Guild members in the draw, but there were 2 major points of interest. First, Hibiki Ritis of Blue Pegasus faced Minerva of Sabrabide. The royal family likely assessed that their strengths were evenly matched, making it a potentially exciting match. However, Hibiki Ritis of Blue Pegasus was completely overwhelmed and severely injured by Minerva. Second, Rio Bastia of Boa Hancock faced Pakaz of Four-Headed Hound. Rio is Gray's senior, also using construct magic, capable of creating various animals from ice for combat. Pakaz's magic was also quite interesting, a unique form of physical magic that combined his powerful physique, strength, magic, and martial arts skills for attacks. His attack power was greatly enhanced when he was drunk. Frankly, if you didn't know he was a magician, just looking at his fighting style, George would have thought he was a martial arts master with profound internal energy. Both sides were evenly matched, fighting for a long time until their magic was exhausted, resulting in a draw. In the end, both guilds received 5 points each. In the third draw, Fairy Tale's Rachel appeared on the battle list. However, the royal family's assessment of her strength was clearly low, so her opponent wasn't a well-known mage. "Go ahead, don't worry, he's no match for you," George encouraged the somewhat nervous Rachel, then flew to Bisca's shoulder and continued to perch there. If it were the original Rachel, she really wouldn't be able to defeat Barrack from the Earth Spirit Wheel Mage Guild. After all, he was one of the strongest mages in her guild. But with George fully equipped, Rachel wasn't in much trouble. "I won't let the guild down." Rachel drew the one George had given her and stepped onto her arena. Dong, the gong sounded, and the match began. "Ha ha ha, I didn't expect to run into Fairy Tale Mage. If I defeat you, Barrack will become famous." Barrack was a short mage with a guild crest printed on his face. He knew he had drawn a Fairy Tale Mage, but he wasn't afraid at all. On the contrary, he was very happy. Because all the mages present knew the Fairy Tale's main force was absent, and among the contestants, only the cat was truly powerful, the other 4 were quite average. However, the audience didn't know this. Seeing how strong the cat was, and considering Fairy Tale's reputation as one of the strongest guilds, they naturally assumed the other 4 wouldn't be too far behind. Therefore, if these mages from smaller guilds could defeat even one of the other 4, they would certainly gain fame. Even if their final ranking wasn't good, the fact that they had defeated a Fairy Tale Mage would bring them many missions. "I'm going to electrocute you." The short Barrack's face revealed a lewd expression as he conjured magic circles in his hands, enveloping his body in lightning. He was also a lightning mage, but a very ordinary one. The lightning stimulated his body, increasing his movement speed. Barrack transformed into a blur as he rushed towards Leaky, then leaped up, grabbing a pillar of electricity and slamming it downwards. Seeing this, Leaky took a deep breath and raised her wand, aiming it at Barrack in midair. Wooden shape, Shy loved M. A green magic circle appeared at the tip of the wand, and hundreds of massive wooden weapons instantly appeared in the air. These wooden weapons, carrying unparalleled power, swatted away Barrack, who was clinging to the lightning pillar, like swatting flies. One-hit kill. Fairy Tale Mage Luigi Alita defeats Barrack of the Earth Spirit Wheel in one move, winning 10 points for the guild. The hosts, seeing Barrack fall unconscious, immediately stood up excitedly and shouted, while the audience erupted in cheers, with even more people shouting for Fairy Tale. The other participating mages watching from below the arena also showed expressions of astonishment. They hadn't expected Fairy Tale to have such a strong opponent besides George. The third group ended, the fourth group didn't, the fifth group didn't, and then the sixth group's match list appeared. This time, his opponent was the four-headed hound mage Nobili. It was obvious that the organizers had discovered the difference between the strength of their guild's mages and the intelligence reports, so they increased the difficulty, placing the remaining 3 at the level of mages from typical popular guilds. The strength of the Four-Headed Hound's mages was far beyond what those unknown small guilds could match. Even with Marcus's magic power amplified tenfold by his wand, the fight was still extremely difficult. He only managed to defeat his opponent by activating the ironclad charm on his cloak and withstanding the magical attacks, thus earning 10 points for his guild. No one appeared in the 7th group, no one in the 8th group, no one in the 9th group, but in the 10th group, Biska's name appeared on the battle list. Her opponent was Jenny Lyle of Blue Pegasus, a cover girl whose popularity was second only to Mira Jane. She also used receiving magic, allowing her to receive machinery and conjure various heavy weapons for combat. A beauty against a beauty, heavy mechanical weapons against a long-range sniper rifle, it was sure to be a spectacle. Although Jenny Lyle was a cover girl, she was also an S-class mage of Blue Pegasus, and under normal circumstances, Biska would be no match for her. However, George upgraded her sniper rifle, giving her bullets near S-class mage magical power. Combined with her cloak barrier defense, the interference of the steel golems, and the invisibility cloak for stealth sniping, Biska managed to defeat Jenny Lyle and win the final victory. So far, Fairy Tail has firmly secured 40 points in the individual competition, ranking first on the leaderboard. They haven't lost a single match so far, while other top guilds have lost at least one, with Blue Pegasus even losing 2. The 11th group had no opponents, the 12th group had no opponents, the 13th group had no opponents, the 14th group had no opponents, and finally, in the 15th group, Alzac's name appeared on the match list. However, upon seeing his opponent's hand, George couldn't help but frown. Alzac, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just do your best. Even if we lose, we'll still be number 1 in points. Alzac's opponent this time is the leader of Sabretooth, the old man named Germain. The old man is nothing to George, but he can sense the magic power within him, definitely top tier S-class mage level, and he's the leader of Sabretooth. With his enhancement, the 4 Fairy Tail members can hold their own against ordinary S-class mages, and with good luck, they might even manage a victory, like Biska against Jenny. However, they are absolutely no match for those top-tier S-class mages. Chapter 367 Tell the chairman, I'm not a coward. Guildmaster, what are you saying? Everyone else has won, and I can't let the guild down. I'll definitely take those last 10 points and make our guild the sole leader, Alzac said firmly. Although the guild currently holds first place, if he loses, Sabretooth will gain those 10 points. Sabretooth Soga lost to George, but the 3 mages behind them won all their matches, earning 30 points. Winning those 10 points would give them 40. Then, in the individual competition, Fairy Tail and Sabretooth would be tied for first place. The key point is, everyone else has won. If he loses, he'll lose face. He was even thinking of using this opportunity to propose to Biska if he won. Alright, then go all out from the start and don't hold back. George, seeing Alzac's determined gaze, didn't try to persuade him further. This is just a match. Even if he loses, it won't be fatal. If there's a real danger, he'll be there. Alzac, go for it. Before Alzac went on stage, Biska gave him a hug, and Lucky and Marcus cheered him on. The Fairy Tail mages in the audience, including Markeo, were so excited they were practically hoarse from shouting. They hadn't expected Lucky and the other 2 to perform so well in the individual competition, earning their guild 30 points. They had been worried that only George would score, leaving their guild at the bottom of the overall standings. Receiving everyone's cheers and encouragement, Alzac, wielding his dual pistols, walked towards the ring. His opponent, Germain, also walked towards the ring, his face filled with malice. Fairy Tail, the strongest guild? HMPH, after this grand magic tournament, they will become history. From now on, the strongest guild will only be Saberbite. The 2 stood still, and the gong sounded. Steel monsters. Alzac didn't dare to be careless and immediately released the 20 winged steel monsters George had created, swarming towards Germain. At the same time, he used his invisibility cloak to become invisible, wielding his dual pistols in conjunction with the steel monsters to unleash a furious barrage of attacks. Those are all child's play. God of War, you're all dead. Seeing this, Germain roared, his muscles bulging, red magic enveloping his entire body, making him appear like a god of war. He punched the nearest steel monster, sending it flying. Physical magic, it seems a little different. George, watching Germain's magic, stroked his whiskers. Germain appeared to be using physical magic, like the four-headed hound, drunken eagle, to enhance his physical combat abilities, but George felt it was more like a summoning spell. It summoned a special spirit to possess his body, greatly enhancing his physical attributes and seemingly inheriting the spirit's unique fighting techniques. Unlike receiving magic, this possession didn't change the mage's external form. This is tough. The steel monsters he created with the world's magical metals were no match for Germain in his god of war form, quickly being destroyed. While Alzac's gun magic, enhanced by Germain, did inflict damage, it was only minor, not enough to render him incapable of fighting. If it weren't for the invisibility cloak concealing his form and constantly shifting positions, Alzac would likely have been taken down by Germain long ago. The difference in their physical abilities was too great. Even so, he didn't last long. Fist of the God of War, Germain exhaled, shouldering his brow. And after taking Alzac's dual gun attack head-on, unleashed a barrage of punches at the spot where Alzac had fired. Hundreds of densely packed magical energy punches covered Alzac's area, and before he could even move, he was struck by this overwhelming attack. Fortunately, his ironclad charm protected him from injury. However, this gave Germain an opportunity to find his true position, and he used his bare hands to tear through the ironclad charm's defenses on the cloak. The outcome of a gunslinger being approached by a warrior at close range was predictable. What followed was essentially a one-sided beating of Alzac by Germain, with Alzac utterly powerless to retaliate. But Alzac gritted his teeth and refused to give up, attempting to retaliate with his dual guns even while being attacked, which further enraged Germain. The weak should know their place. Kneel down and admit defeat. You dare to resist? I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget. Germain slammed Alzac's body to the ground, then stomped on Alzac's right leg, intending to cripple it. The rules of the match forbade killing, but they didn't forbid crippling. Alzac, Bisca, watching from below, was heartbroken and tears streamed down her face. The other fairy tale mages gritted their teeth in anger. However, just as Germain's foot was about to strike, a cat appeared beside Alzac. I advise you to be kind. Terrifying magic erupted from George's body instantly. The terrifying killing intent made Germain instantly see mountains of corpses and seas of blood, his hair standing on end. His survival instinct kicked in, and he instinctively took more than 10 steps back before finally stopping, barely managing to suppress his fear. Having intimidated Germain, George withdrew his imposing aura and turned to the announcer in the stands, saying, I concede this match on behalf of Alzac. Despite his seemingly small number of kills in this world, countless orcs had perished at his hands during the wars in Middle-earth. Combined with the difference in strength and the power of psychological manipulation, he could easily intimidate someone of Germain's caliber with mere presence. Alzac, seeing George concede on Alzac's behalf, Bisca and the other two immediately carried the heavily injured Alzac off the stage. I have something to say. Before the announcer could answer, Germain's daughter, Minerva, stepped onto the stage, fanning herself. Mr. George, interfering with a match violates the rules. Shouldn't you deduct some points? The rules only state that no third party can interfere with a match using magic. I only appeared here to help the unconscious teammate concede. I didn't use any magic. It's just that your father is rather timid. He suddenly retreated upon seeing me, George replied calmly. You're asking for it. Germain's face flushed crimson at these words, and he was about to attack George when Minerva stopped him. Father, don't fall for his trick. If their father attacked George now, he would be breaking the rules, and they would lose points. The host and special guests discussed for a moment and said, Alzac is unconscious and unable to concede, and Captain George has conceded on his behalf, which is in accordance with the rules. Saberby Tigers gets 10 points for this match. Meanwhile, before losing consciousness, Alzac whispered in Bisca's ear with his last strength, Tell the president, I'm not a coward. Chapter 368 Team Defense Battle. HMPH, Germain and Minerva snorted and walked off the stage after hearing the host's result. Although they had won, they were not happy, especially Germain, who felt extremely ashamed that he had been frightened by George. Father, rest assured, the strongest guild will definitely be ours. Minerva quickly adjusted her mindset and regained her composure. Even if George was stronger than her father, he was only one person. She had already seen through the other four. They mainly relied on magical items to greatly enhance their combat power. In reality, Their magical power was not strong. She believed that the mages with slightly stronger abilities in the audience had also seen this and had countermeasures. It was unlikely that they could achieve the same surprise effect as in the individual matches in the later battles. The first match of the official competition ended, with Fairy Tail and Sabretooth tied for first place in the leaderboard with 40 points each. Boa Hancock was ranked second with 35 points. Mermaid Belle and Blue Pegasus were ranked third, both with 30 points. There are many guilds ranked fourth and fifth, mostly with 25 and 20 points, among which Four-Headed Hound is quite well known. Due to behind-the-scenes manipulation in the individual competition, opponents of similar strength are matched as much as possible during each round. Therefore, even a popular guild like Four-Headed Hound can't get high scores if they are unlucky. Of course, if the overall strength is high, the score won't be bad. Later team battles and free-for-alls will truly depend on overall strength. Weaker mage guilds will likely struggle to get high scores, and top guilds will stand out even more. The royal family hosting the Grand Magic Tournament, this manipulation in the first round is understandable, to increase excitement. However, if this continues, the audience isn't stupid and will quickly see the problem. Constantly pitting strong guilds against strong ones and weak guilds against weak ones means that even if the weaker guilds score high, it won't be convincing. Like in the first individual round, there were many smaller guilds with similar scores to Four-Headed Hound, but everyone knew that those smaller guilds were far weaker than Four-Headed Hound. Heal him quickly. After the match, George used healing magic to heal the severely injured Alzac. Healing magic is a lost art in this world, rarely mastered by mages. Therefore, mages usually treat injuries with bandages and herbs. However, mages have much stronger constitutions than ordinary people, allowing them to recover much faster. He heard from Macau that during his 100 Years quest, the guild recruited a little girl named Wendy who could use Sky Dragon Slayer magic and was also capable of healing injuries. Unfortunately, she and the old guild master were sealed in the fairy sphere. Guild master, if possible, could you please heal Hibiki of Blue Pegasus? He was badly injured by Minerva of Sabretooth. Seeing Alzac healed, Macau requested George's help. Blue Pegasus and Fairy Tail had a good relationship. Their guild master had also been from Fairy Tail, and they had even fought together against the Oraciones. Before George returned, Tenrao Island disappeared, and the guild master of Blue Pegasus, along with their mages, had been searching the area in their magical airship. Since we're allies, we should naturally help each other. He'd heard about Blue Pegasus from Macau. In any case, even if he cured Hibiki of Blue Pegasus, it wouldn't affect the final competition result. Of Blue Pegasus's 5 mages, 3 handsome mages were at near S rank, the cover girl Jenny was S rank, and only the leader, Ichaya, who used perfume magic, reached top-tier S rank. In fact, let alone Blue Pegasus, even if all the contestants from the other 29 mage guilds joined forces, they couldn't defeat Fairy Tail. Oh no, to be precise, they couldn't defeat them. That night, as George led the Fairy Tail mages away from the inn where Blue Pegasus was recuperating, he couldn't help but sigh. They really are all handsome men and beautiful women. No wonder they're known as the most eye-catching mage guild in the kingdom. I heard that the first criterion for joining Blue Pegasus isn't strength, but appearance. If their appearance doesn't meet the requirements, they won't accept them no matter how strong they are. The talkative Marcus couldn't help but gossip. Beside him, Rachel seemed to have thought of something and shook her head with a hint of disgust. Not all of them. Look at their guild leader, Bob, and that leader, Ichaya. They don't meet their recruitment standards. Blue Pegasus was indeed full of handsome men and beautiful women, but their guild leader was a fat, transvestite uncle who spoke strangely. Their leader, Ichaya, was short and overweight, and his appearance was truly unappealing. You don't know this, do you? I heard the old guild leader say that before Bob left our Fairy Tail guild, he was our guild's undisputed #1 heartthrob. As for Lord Ichaya, I think he's not as simple as he appears. You see, Hibiki, Ivan, and Ren all call him teacher. They admire him greatly. Markeo and Wakaba, the 2 most senior Fairy Tail mages, explained. They chatted and walked around, and soon arrived at the rented hotel. After Macau and the others went upstairs, George teleported back to their dormitory with the 4 of them. The next day, the second team battle of the official competition began. Pumpkin Man explained the competition rules to everyone again. Today's team battle is also called the team defense battle. Based on the preliminary rounds and individual competitions, we have selected the 6 strongest guilds to serve as the reigning champion guilds. The remaining 24 guilds will be randomly divided into 6 groups of 4, each group able to challenge a matched reigning champion guild one-on-one in turn. Defeating one member of the reigning champion guild will earn 10 points. Defeating all 5 members of the reigning champion guild will not only earn you 50 points but also make you the reigning champion, allowing you to continue defending your title and earning points. As the reigning champion guild, you will earn 3 points for each challenger you defeat. If you defeat all 4 guilds that challenged you, a total of 20 challengers, you will earn a full 60 points. A team defense battle. Hearing Pumpkin Man's explanation of the rules, most of the mages and spectators were somewhat confused. This was the first time they had heard of this competition format. They had initially thought it was a team-based draw. However, after understanding the rules, they all became excited. For weaker guilds, who already know they can't win, defeating 1 or 2 well-known guild mages through attrition on this arena could significantly boost their reputation. For stronger guilds, a well-executed match could yield a substantial number of points, narrowing the gap caused by their lagging performance in the individual competition. For the audience, this new competition format is also exciting and entertaining. Chapter 369. Let's all come at each other. Pretty good. George felt the same way after hearing the rules of the team defense battle. This team defense battle, in essence, was a contest of the guild's overall strength. For their guild, regardless of whether they became the reigning champion guild, they would at least get 60 points. Actually, if he could, he wouldn't want to be the reigning champion guild. Because the reigning champion guild could only get a maximum of 60 points, while a non-reigning champion guild could get 105 points if they played well. They first challenged the 5 members of the reigning champion guild, each giving them 10 points, which would be 50 points. After becoming the champion, they would then challenge the remaining 3 challenger guilds, each giving them 15 points, 45 points in total. 60 points plus 45 points equaled 105 points. However, considering the organizers wouldn't let their guild be a challenger guild, they were definitely going to be the reigning champion guild, given their strong performance in the preliminaries and individual matches. If they had deliberately shown weakness in the first 2 matches, there might have been some chance now. However, that wasn't what he wanted. What he wanted was to lead his guild on a relentless push, without needing to feign weakness. He wanted to demonstrate that Fairy Tail was the strongest, and that he, George, would crush all rivals with a single cat. Sure enough, after explaining the rules, the Pumpkin Man announced the list of the 6 reigning guilds: Fairy Tail, Saberbite, Mermaid Heel, Boa Hancock, Four-Headed Hound, and Blue Pegasus. After the list was announced, random matchmaking began, and soon the 4 challenger guilds facing each reigning guild appeared on the large magical projection screen. Next came the pre-battle meetings for each guild. Since it was a team battle, coordination was crucial. Who would go first, whose magic was more effective against the opponent, how to score points, and how to defend them, all these things needed to be discussed in the meetings. This team battle to defend the title wouldn't be easy for either the defending or challenger guilds. The defending guild's mages were indeed powerful, but they were facing mages outnumbered by 4 to 1, and none of the guild mages who made it to the main tournament were weak. Even a wizarding 10 like Joe had limited magical energy. Continuous use of magic would eventually deplete their energy and render them incapable of fighting. For the challenger guild, facing the clearly stronger defending guild, the order in which they went first or last was crucial. Going first meant securing points, and those confident might even aim to defeat the defending guild and become the defending guild themselves. Going last allowed them to wait for the challenger guilds to wear down the defending guild, then reap the benefits. Meanwhile, George and the 4 were having a small meeting. However, the meeting ended in less than a minute because George had already devised a battle strategy. Our strategy is simple: I'll go first, wipe them all out, and finish with 60 points. Guildmaster, isn't that a bit too brute force? The 4 widened their eyes upon hearing George's strategy. They figured that no defending guild would put their ace mage first. Firstly, it was incredibly difficult for one person to defeat 20 of the best mages from 4 guilds consecutively. Even if they could, they would be exhausted and have used all their strength. Secondly, that would expose all their magic and special moves, and there was still a chaotic battle to come after the team battles. Therefore, the wisest approach was to save their ace for last. If the first 4 guilds had already defended their positions, the ace wouldn't need to be used. If they couldn't, the ace could still be used. As for the first 4 being defeated, giving the challenger guild 40 points, It didn't really matter. 40 points divided among 4 teams wouldn't pose much of a threat. As long as they held on until the end, they would have 60 points. We need to be simple and straightforward. That way, the audience will remember us, and we'll get more guild missions in the future. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After finalizing the strategy, George led his 4 men to a chosen arena, waiting for the 4 randomly selected challenger guilds to come and challenge them. About 20 minutes later, the other 5 arenas also had their champion guilds on the stage, and the challenger guilds below had agreed on the order of challenges. Dong, the gong rang out. The team defense battle officially begins. Challengers, please come to the stage. As the host's loud voice rang out, the cheers and shouts of encouragement from the audience resounded throughout the arena. We, the Wild Boar's Tusks, are here to challenge. The 5 mages of Wild Boar's Tusks arrived at the arena that George and his group were defending. They felt quite lucky to have been assigned to the Fairy Tail Guild's arena. Firstly, they knew they couldn't possibly defeat Fairy Tail to become the new champion, but apart from the leader cat, the other 4 mages had basically enhanced their strength with magical items. Now that they knew the abilities of their opponent's magical items, as long as they used them properly, even if they couldn't defeat all 4, defeating 3 wouldn't be a problem, thus securing 30 points. This was why they rushed to attack first. Otherwise, if the other guilds cleared the first 4, they would have to deal with the cat. As everyone knows, that cat wasn't relying on magical items, it was genuinely strong. Even the leader of Sabertooth was scared away, its magical power was terrifying. They didn't want to face it last, as they might be eliminated without scoring a single point. However, just as they were waiting to see which of the 4 members of Lucky would go first, and then preparing to send out their counters according to their agreed-upon strategy, they saw their opposing leader, George, spread his wings and fly to their side. No way. Seeing that Fairy Tail's first opponent was actually their strongest leader, George, the 5 members of Boar's Tusk were dumbfounded. So aggressive? The other 5 arena champions were also surprised. They hadn't expected Fairy Tail to reveal their trump card right from the start, unlike them who had all saved their trump cards for last. Meanwhile, the Crocodile Skin Guild below the Fairy Tail arena was all smiles. They were the last team on this stage. If the first 3 teams could defeat the cat leading the team, they might have a chance to defeat the last 4, get 40 points, and even win the title of champion. No need to take them one by one, it's too much of a waste of time. Come on all at once, George said immediately after landing. According to the rules, the 5 members of the guild were to take turns going on stage for one-on-one battles, and if they lost, they would continue until they defeated a mage from the champion guild to get 10 points. But George thought it was too troublesome to deal with them one by one, so he wanted all 5 of them to come on at once. In his opinion, dealing with 5 was no different from dealing with 1, it was equally easy. Chapter 370 Instant kill, and still an instant kill. You're too arrogant and conceited. Hearing George's words, the Boar's Tusk leader's eyes lit up. If the 5 of them could team up and gang up on him, they really had a chance. 2 of them were close to S rank, and the remaining 3, while not quite S rank, were still seasoned veterans with rich combat experience. The reason why mages prefer to take on missions in small teams is because different spells can be combined to achieve a synergistic effect, especially when mages work together seamlessly. With the 5 of them working together, they could defeat not only ordinary S-rank mages but even top-tier S-rank mages. Let's go. Fearing that George might change his mind, the leader quickly signaled to his teammates, and following their usual battle formation, they swiftly surrounded George. Transformation, Earth Dragon Spear. A magic circle lit up in the leader mage's hand, and a powerfully designed, Earth Yellow Spear appeared in his grasp. As the strongest mage of the Wild Boar's Tusks, this Earth Dragon Spear was a top-tier magical weapon he forged using the mission rewards he accumulated over 20 years. He had kept it hidden from use in previous battles. With the Earth Dragon Spear, his strength was comparable to an S-rank mage, and the Earth Dragon Spear was a perfect counter to his opponent's lightning magic. The team leader mage moved swiftly behind George and thrust his spear forward. Countless sharp earth spikes were drawn from the Earth Dragon Spear and launched an attack on George's back. This guy's been hiding it well. The mages below the arena were all surprised to see the Wild Boar's Tusk's leader pull out such a top-tier magical weapon as the Earth Dragon Spear. In the previous one-on-one individual matches, many mages had held back their strength when they could defeat their opponents, hoping to unleash a surprising effect in the more intense matches later on. Ice magic, ice coffin. Before George could react to defend against the Earth Dragon Spear and the Earth Spikes, another boar-like mage slammed his hands on the ground, and ice immediately appeared beneath George, freezing him completely. Charm magic, charm. At the same time, another controlled-type mage with large breasts blew a kiss at George, unleashing a charm spell that made it impossible for him to concentrate. Ring magic, fire serpent entanglement, wind magic, storm blade, a combination of mental and physical control, a barrage of wind and fire elemental attacks, and the finishing touch of the Earth Dragon Spear, which counters lightning. The boar's tusks' perfectly coordinated attacks drew gasps of admiration from the mages and spectators present, who also felt a chill for George. They felt that while George was strong, he was too confident, allowing all 5 of them to attack him together. In the face of absolute power, all these fancy tricks are useless. Facing the combined attack of the 5, George's body trembled, and his powerful physical strength shattered the ice coffin binding him. This level of ice was completely ineffective against him. Turning his head to look at the busty female mage, he activated his mental power and directly counter-controlled her. As his clones multiplied and his magical strength grew, his mental power surged accordingly. His mental abilities, enhanced by his mental power, were no longer at level 2 but had long since advanced to level 3. With level 3 mental power and the brain closure technique, the busty female mage's charm was unable to penetrate his mental defenses. Perhaps the charm magic of a level 10 mage might have some effect. At the same time as activating his mental abilities, metal control was activated, and the Earth Dragon Spear on his back forcibly broke free from the leader mage's grasp and slammed down. The force of several thousand tons slammed into the back of the leader mage, who hadn't even reacted, instantly slamming him into the arena, knocking him unconscious. The team leader mage fainted, and the dense array of earthen spikes instantly vanished. George, wielding his top-tier magical weapon, the Earth Dragon Spear, teleported to the arena, first shattering the fire serpents and wind blades, then circling the arena, knocking the remaining 4 mages unconscious one by one from the back of the head. From George shattering the ice to the 5 mages falling one after another, what seemed complex actually took less than a second. Next guild, hiss, all the mages below the arena gasped, including the mages from the 5 reigning guilds that hadn't even started yet. This was ridiculous. That encirclement attack, in their eyes, was a formidable one. Even the 10 saints wouldn't dare claim they could easily handle it, yet George had annihilated them instantly. Crucially, it wasn't some kind of powerful area of effect spell, it was resolved with remarkable ease, without even using the lightning magic he'd used to defeat Olga. The terrifying thing was that no one saw the magic circle rise. They had no idea what magic he used or how he controlled the opponent's Earth Dragon Spear. What if they face us later? How will they defend? Fairy Tail defeated 5 challengers in one go, earning 15 points. Let's cheer for them. Fairy Tail, Fairy Tail, Fairy Tail. The audience erupted in the loudest applause and cheers in history. One person instantly defeated an entire guild. Even those unfamiliar with the game could clearly see George's power. He must have used up a lot of magic power just now. We still have a chance. The leader of the Monster Liver Magic Guild, the second to step onto the stage, swallowed hard and encouraged his 4 teammates as they shakily made their way up. Captain, he doesn't seem to have used up much magic power at all, one of the team members stammered. We're from Monsters, Dragon Slayer Magic, Roar of the Wood Flame Dragon. A magic circle lit up in front of George, and terrifying tricolored flames burst forth. Before the 5 could finish speaking, they were burned and collapsed to the ground. Not interested in knowing. Next guild, George waved his cat paw. This is true power, this is the difference in strength. Just like how Black Dragon's roar wiped out all the top members of Fairy Tail, while he is not as powerful as Black Dragon yet, and is in cat form, his roar could easily annihilate these guilds of mages who didn't even have an S rank. We are, Dragon Slayer Magic, Roar of the Wood Flame Dragon. We, Dragon Slayer Magic, Roar of the Wood Flame Dragon. Instant kill, and more instant kill. 4 teams from different mage guilds went up to the arena, but facing George standing there, their magic was instantly burned and killed by the terrifying flames as soon as it was released. In the face of absolute power, there was truly no ability to resist. George didn't even move an inch. Before the first mage of the first challenging guild on the other 5 arenas had finished fighting, George had already defeated the mages of 4 challenging guilds and obtained 60 points. Chapter 371 The Gate of Eclipse. The 10 Wizard Saints, absolutely the 10 Wizard Saints, watching George lead his team off the stage, Kagura of Mermaid Heel, Ichiao of Blue Pegasus, German of Saberbite, and Minerva all wore solemn expressions. He was too strong. They couldn't tell what was going on in the first match, but the terrifying three-colored flames in the following 3 matches, even from across the stage, they could feel the terrifying power contained within. So strong, he's got the strength of a 10 Wizard Saint, right? Leo of Boa Hancock asked Jura, the real 10 Wizard Saint beside him. A 10 Wizard Saint? He's probably not just any 10 Wizard Saint. It seems we'll have to disappoint the Guildmaster this time. Jura clasped his hands together and slowly closed his eyes. As the weakest of the 10 Wizard Saints, he had seen all the 10 Wizard Saints, the most terrifying of whom were the 4 top 10 Wizard Saints, the 4 Heavenly Kings of Aishgar, who were considered inhuman. Even the 4th ranked of the 4 Heavenly Kings could easily defeat the 6 ranked below them. The most powerful among them is Serena, ranked number 1 and a Dragon Slayer mage. He possesses 8 Dragon Slayer crystals and can use 8 different Dragon Slayer magic spells, making him comparable to a god. The moment George used his Dragon Slayer magic, he felt a sense of deja vu, reminiscent of facing Serena. If George's strength truly reached the level of the 4 Heavenly Kings of Aishgar, then winning first place in this Grand Magic Games would be extremely difficult. Don't say that. He is indeed strong, but we're not bad either. The pink-haired beauty mage Sherry Brandy, using puppet magic, made a cheering gesture. She felt that even if George was one of the 10 Wizard Saints, Jura was also one, so there was nothing to fear. They also had Leo, who could fight the 4-headed hound leader mage to a draw. Their overall strength should be stronger than Fairy Tail. This cat actually has such strength. German of Saberbite's tone was filled with 7 parts anger and 3 parts jealousy. A cold glint flashed in his daughter Minerva's eyes. So what if he's one of the 10 Wizard Saints? He's just a cat with strength but no brains. I have plenty of ways to deal with him in tomorrow's grand melee. No one can take away my strength. If that cat had hidden its strength and revealed it on the last day of the competition, it could have caught everyone off guard. Unfortunately, a cat is a cat. It likes to show its claws but has no brains. You already have a plan. As expected of my daughter whom I've carefully nurtured since childhood, Germaine's face showed a look of satisfaction. A flash of disgust crossed Minerva's eyes, and she explained, it has already revealed its 10 Wizard Saint strength, which has aroused the suspicion of all the mages. Tomorrow, with a little guidance, it will be easy to get everyone to focus their efforts on eliminating it first. It can defeat 5 mages working together. Can it defeat 50? 100? This Grand Magus martial arts tournament is indeed strange. Stepping down from the arena, George ignored the wary looks of the group of mages and the cheers of the audience, and instead frowned as he looked towards the royal palace. He hadn't paid much attention before, but just now, while casting Dragon Slayer magic, he vaguely realized that the magical power he generated was being drawn towards the royal palace by a hidden force. After defeating the 4 challenger guilds, he leaned on Leaky's shoulder and sensed the power again, discovering that it wasn't just him. The magical power released by all the mages in the arena during their battles was being drawn towards the royal palace. It was as if something was devouring the magical power from the palace. I'll go check it out tonight. Since the royal family was involved in a conspiracy, he naturally had to find out what was going on. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to be tricked. His current strength was indeed strong, but not the strongest. He still had Black Dragon, the 5 divine dragons, and the 4 heavenly kings of Aishgar. He hadn't fought them and didn't know their level. So it was better to be cautious. Another day passed, and the 3rd team defense battle finally ended. Fairy Tail maintained its first place in points. Sabertooth was in the same boat. Although it took longer than Fairy Tail, it also defeated all the Challenger Guild members and obtained 60 points. The other 4 reigning guilds, except for the 4 hounds which fought to the last team and lost due to their mages running out of magic power, scoring only 45 points, all scored 60 points. This match truly made the audience realize the difference in strength between top-tier guild mages and ordinary guild mages. Late at night, after everyone had fallen asleep, George apparated and disappeared from the dormitory, flying stealthily towards the royal palace. Following the magic absorption trajectory he had sensed during the day, he avoided the palace's patrolling guards and arrived at a basement beneath the palace, finally finding a large door engraved with the patterns of the 12 golden zodiac spirits. This door is not simple. After circling the door and carefully observing the patterns and magic runes on it, George was somewhat shocked. As an alchemy master, he naturally had some knowledge of fairy tales alchemy. In order to build a floating city in the Marvel Universe, he had even specifically sought out some spellbooks for crafting magical airships to study. Therefore, he immediately recognized that the gate was made of extremely rare and expensive magical metals, and it incorporated many profound alchemical techniques that he had never seen in magic books. However, upon closer inspection, he vaguely sensed that the gate seemed to be related to the celestial spirit magic and advanced time magic of this world. Celestial spirit magic was unique to this world and couldn't be used in other worlds. He hadn't studied it much, but the 12 patterns on the gate were clearly those of the 12 golden celestial spirits. As for time magic, he had been studying the laws of time and could naturally see it. What is the royal family's purpose in using a grand magic to replenish the gate's magic power? After thinking carefully in front of the gate, he felt that to figure everything out, he should find the king of this country. Such a big event was most likely orchestrated by the king. He could secretly use magic to read their memories, and everything would be clear. If even the king didn't know, he could read the memories of the queen, princesses, and ministers in the palace. Surely one of them would know. However, just as he was about to use a tracking spell to locate the king, a magic circle suddenly lit up beneath his feet, breaking the illusion spell on his body. I've been discovered. Hearing the dense chorus of guards' voices around him, he abruptly looked up at the sky, only to find a magical eye staring in his direction. It seems the magic created by the Magic Development Bureau is indeed unique. I hadn't even noticed any surveillance magic here. Discovered, so be it. If he couldn't use stealth, he'd use open warfare. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372 I Can Still Torment You Without Magic. How dare you, cat? How dare you trespass into the royal palace? A white knight in silver armor, leading a group of armed soldiers, surrounded George. Upon seeing his face, George's expression changed drastically. It's you, George, the leader of the fairy tale mages, who had single-handedly defeated 5 guild mages during the day and was now considered by the kingdom's intelligence department to possess the strength of the 10 wizard saints. How could he not recognize him? Good evening, and who are you? George didn't attack, but instead smiled and raised his paw in greeting. The white knight paused for 3 seconds, then smiled back. I am Arcadius, the captain of the Sakura Holy Knights, responsible for protecting the royal palace. Mr. George, what business do you have trespassing in? If not, please leave immediately. This place is not open to the public. If any other mage had trespassed into the royal palace's basement and seen the Eclipse Gate, he would have immediately arrested them and imprisoned them. The Eclipse Gate project was a top secret of the kingdom and absolutely could not be leaked. However, this cat opposite him possessed the strength of one of the 10 wizard saints, and he didn't want to start a conflict unless absolutely necessary. Besides, the cat might not even know what the Eclipse Gate was or what its purpose was. That won't do. I discovered something at the main arena today. Something in the palace was absorbing the magical energy released during our battle. I didn't expect it to be a large gate. I think I have the right to know what your royal family's purpose is in hosting this grand Magus tournament. George raised his paw and pointed at the gate. Of course, if you don't want to tell me, I'll expose everything that happened here. I believe the palace will be overflowing with mages wanting to know the answers tomorrow. In this situation, he had discovered the royal family's conspiracy using the Grand Magus tournament, and he had caught them red-handed, so he had nothing to fear. The royal family should be the ones to be afraid. Since you've already discovered it, there's nothing I can do. Arcadius waved his hand. Grab him. The kingdom's soldiers immediately dropped their weapons and pounced on George. George raised an eyebrow. You think these ordinary soldiers can catch me? Actually, I didn't want to cause trouble. After all, tomorrow's competition will definitely be chaotic without you. You just need to pretend you know nothing and leave. But since you've discovered the Eclipse Gate's absorption of magic power, I have no choice but to lock you up for now. As for whether I can catch you, I think you'd better not use magic. Arcadius smiled confidently. The Eclipse system, centered on the Eclipse Gate, can absorb the magic power emitted by all the mages in the city during battle, and the absorption effect is even better in front of the Eclipse Gate. Therefore, As long as a mage uses magic near the Eclipse Gate, their magic power will be forcibly absorbed by the Eclipse Gate, resulting in a state of magic power deficiency. Although George has the strength of one of the 10 wizard saints, if he can't use magic, he's just an ordinary cat. Oh, so your trump card is this door. You think I could sense the magic being absorbed by it in the main hall, but you wouldn't notice it here. Hearing Arcadius's words, George shook his head. As a master alchemist, he had already discovered this characteristic of the Eclipse Gate while studying it. However, while Arcadius's trump card might be useful to other mages, it posed no threat to him. First, his most fundamental bloodline was that of a wizard, capable of generating a continuous stream of magic power. Even if he let the Eclipse Gate absorb it all, it would never run out. Second, he practiced meditation, giving him extremely strong control over his magic power, completely preventing any leakage and absorption by the Eclipse Gate. Finally, even if his magic power was exhausted, he still had superpowers: level 5.5 Misaka Mikado's electricity, level 3 top-tier Magneto's magnetism, and level 3 psychic abilities. Even without considering these, his current physical abilities alone could easily sweep through the kingdom guards in this area. Imagine the power of so many clones concentrated in a kitten slightly larger than a palm. How terrifying would that kitten's physical body be? It's like a human crushing an ant, while an ant can lift objects over 400 times its own weight. If an ant possessed human strength, killing a human would be easier than a human crushing an ant. 1, 2, 3, George didn't use any abilities, relying solely on his physical speed to leap repeatedly across the shoulders of the kingdom's soldiers, moving so fast that only a blurry afterimage could be seen. With each leap, he casually lashed out at the back of the soldier's head with his tail. So, after he had lapped all the soldiers' shoulders, they were all unconscious on the ground. Even without magic, I can still crush you. Looks like I'll have to do it myself. Arcadius drew his longsword, aiming it at George. He hadn't expected his opponent to possess such power even without magic. However, as the leader of the kingdom's Sakura Holy Knights, he was no pushover. His swordsmanship was among the best in the entire kingdom, and even without magical enhancement, he had a chance of winning. Oh, I forgot to tell you, as long as I don't want to, that gate can't absorb my magic, so I can still use magic. George unfurled a pair of wings and flew to Arcadius's side. Upon seeing this, Arcadius swiftly sheathed his sword and said seriously, "Actually, I don't think there's any need to fight. We can sit down and talk things over." What a joke. Fighting the 10 saints with swordsmanship? Only a moron would think he could win. Of course, he should have realized that since the other party could cast invisibility magic in front of the Eclipse Gate, he must have a way to counteract its suction. No need to talk, I'll take a look myself. George flashed to Arcadius's head and placed his cat paw on it. After a moment, he said with some surprise, "So, your goal is to kill Zeref and change history?" From Arcadius's memories, he knew that the kingdom held the Grand Magic Games to collect magical power so that on the day of the lunar eclipse 7 years later, they could open the Eclipse Gate and travel back in time. The laws of time in the Protoss world are different from those in the human world, and the Eclipse Gate can be used to travel through time by relying on the power of the 12 golden keys and the time laws of the Protoss world. As long as enough magical power is collected, on the day of the lunar eclipse, a Protoss mage wielding the 12 golden keys can open the Eclipse Gate. Chapter 373 Robber Cat George. The whole affair actually began with the disappearance of Fairy Tail's main members in Tenrau Island. Fairy Tail, the kingdom's strongest guild, couldn't even withstand a single blow from Acnologia and was completely wiped out, a truly terrifying prospect for the kingdom. If Acnologia had attacked the kingdom itself, would it have been utterly defenseless? The kingdom began researching all information about Acnologia and eventually found clues in some ancient texts. These texts revealed details about the Dragon King festival and prophesied Acnologia's impending doom. They believed Acnologia's existence stemmed from the black mage Zeref. After all, only Zeref, who had created countless demons, could have created such a terrifying monster. Led by the kingdom and the princess, and with Arcadius as a facilitator, a force devised the Eclipse Gate plan to prevent humanity's future annihilation by Acnologia. The plan involved using the Eclipse Gate, passed down through generations of the kingdom, to travel through time to before Zeref became a black mage, kill him, and prevent Acnologia's birth. This would naturally avert the Doomsday Crisis. The forces led by Defense Minister Dutton did not entirely agree with the plan, fearing it would alter history and cause the kingdom's demise. However, They did not stop the Grand Magus tournament and the Eclipse Gate from absorbing magical energy. Looking at it this way, what you're doing isn't so bad after all. According to the plan itself, the kingdom was holding the Grand Magus tournament to collect magical energy, and then opening the Eclipse Gate 7 years later to return to the past, all for the sake of humanity. Even at the cost of altering history and potentially disappearing, it was indeed a noble act. That's how it is. The king and princess are also trying to save humanity. We have no intention of harming the participating mages. We hope you can keep this a secret for the kingdom. This matter cannot be revealed to everyone now, it will cause chaos. Hearing George's words, Arcadius understood that George must have read his memories through some kind of magic, and thus earnestly requested. If history were changed, the entire world would change, many people who existed before would disappear, and people who didn't exist before would appear, something most people could not accept. Although there will be sacrifices, it's better than being wiped out by the Black Dragon. I admire your spirit of sacrifice, but your approach is wrong. George shook his head. First, I've been to the northern continent and learned some information about the Black Dragon. Its name is Acnologia, and it wasn't created by Zareth. So even if you go back in time and kill Zareth, you can't make the current Black Dragon disappear. Second, according to my research on time magic, even if you really travel through time through this door, you can't change the present. Third, assuming you go back in time and kill Zareth to prevent the Black Dragon from being created, have you considered that without the Black Dragon, the dragon race wouldn't be wiped out? If the dragon race hadn't been wiped out, humanity might have already been wiped out by the dragons. The result would be the same. Time is a long river, flowing forward without turning back. You can slow down time and suddenly appear in the future, but under normal circumstances, you can't go back in time to change history. Of course, the laws of time differ in different worlds, and there are different situations. In the Marvel Universe, using a time machine to go back in time doesn't truly return you to the past, it opens a new timeline, a new world. Changing the history of that timeline doesn't alter the history of your own timeline. In the Harry Potter world, using a time tamper to go back in time makes changes that are already part of history. And in the movie Back to the Future, going back in time to change history means that when you return to the future, history has truly been altered. However, based on his research into time magic in this world, the laws of time in this world are likely similar to those in the Marvel Universe. Even if this Eclipse Gate can truly travel through time to the past, it's to the past of another timeline, changing the history of that other timeline. The history of this world remains the same. Impossible. Arcadius clearly didn't believe what George was saying. George spread his paws. Believe it or not, what I said is true. He then took out a box and placed the Eclipse Gate inside, storing it in his space. Alright, that's settled. To prevent you from doing anything foolish, I'll keep the Eclipse Gate for safekeeping. He naturally wanted to study the Eclipse Gate, a magical device capable of traversing time and space, and he was also very interested in time travel. There were too few dragons in this timeline. If he could travel to the past, even to other timelines, where dragons existed in large numbers, he could obtain a large amount of dragon crystals by slaying them. Perhaps if he killed enough, he might even obtain the same devouring magic as the Black Dragon. As for the magic power required for the Eclipse Gate, he didn't need to absorb the magic power emitted by grand mages or martial arts mages, he could replenish it himself with a little more time. His magical power after transforming into dragon was terrifying, and with its continuous regeneration, he could replenish it in about 10 days to half a month. When the rare lunar eclipse occurred 7 years later, he could open the Eclipse Gate and travel to that era when dragons flourished. How could you do this? You're a robber. The Gate of Eclipse is a treasure passed down through generations of the kingdom. You can't take it. I can report this to the king and then we can revise our plan. Arcadius was furious when he saw George take the Gate of Eclipse, and he drew his sword. But George's next words made him freeze. Tell the king that I've taken the gate and will return it to you after the 7-year lunar eclipse. That way, you won't be able to carry out that foolish plan. Also, don't even think about taking it by force. On one hand, you can't beat them, and on the other hand, I have teleportation magic and can teleport directly to the Magic Council. If you insist on taking it by force, I will not only expose the plan, but I will also hand the gate over to the Magic Council. Your plan has violated at least 30 safety regulations set by the Magic Council. I believe they will be happy to have a good talk with your king. Before Arcadius could speak, George had already apparated and disappeared from the spot. returning to his dormitory. The royal family is not the most powerful institution in the kingdom, the Magic Council is. The royal family governs ordinary people, while the Magic Council governs mages. And it governs not only the kingdom of Fiore, but the entire eastern continent. Chapter 374 Don't Send Trash. After George left, Arcadius immediately went to report the situation to the king, princess, and Minister of Defense. This is outrageous. Send the Hungry Wolf Knights, Minister of Defense Dalton said angrily. Although he didn't approve of the Eclipse Gate plan, he couldn't allow a mage to so blatantly offend the royal family's dignity, daring to forcibly seize the Eclipse Gate, a treasure passed down through generations of the royal family. Actually, I think he has some merit, King Thomas C. Firefier said, frowning as he held his pumpkin headgear. He himself had doubts about using the Eclipse Gate to go back in time and kill Zareth, but the princess and Arcadius had insisted. What George said did seem to make some sense to him. Father, regardless of whether what that cat said is true or false, the Gate of Eclipse definitely cannot be left with it. We must retrieve it as soon as possible. Princess Emerald E. Fiore, the kingdom's sole heir, who appeared only 11 or 12 but possessed a remarkably mature demeanor, stepped forward and spoke to the king. I suggest deploying the Hungry Wolf Knights. The Minister of Defense also stepped forward. The king considered for a moment, then nodded, all right, but don't kill him. He didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Bring him back and lock him up. Don't worry, Your Majesty, the Hungry Wolf Knights are discreet, the Minister of Defense replied confidently. The Hungry Wolf Knights, a secret independent force of the kingdom exclusively for the royal family, consisted of only 5 members. Each was a top-tier S-rank mage, extremely skilled in killing magic, and their teamwork was impeccable. Since their formation, they had never failed. Even if George were a Saint 10-rank mage, he would absolutely be no match for the 5 of them working together. A moment later, a magic circle lit up in the palace conference room, and 5 mages dressed in strange and unique costumes, clearly masters among masters, appeared before everyone's eyes. The Hungry Wolf Knights are reporting for duty. Your mission is, the Minister of Defense quickly explained the mission to reclaim the Eclipse Gate. Remember, if possible, try not to make too much noise, so as not to affect tomorrow's final match. Don't worry, we will bring back the Eclipse Gate in half an hour, but its injuries may be quite serious, so we need to prepare a physician in advance. The leader of the Hungry Wolf Knights, with 2 giant scythes stuck in his back, replied coolly, then disappeared with his 4 team members. 15 minutes later, a soldier ran breathlessly into the hall. Your Majesty, the Hungry Wolf Knights are back. As expected of the Hungry Wolf Knights, they said half an hour, but they finished in 15 minutes. The Minister of Defense couldn't help but praise them. No, they were carried back. The soldier quickly finished speaking when he realized the Minister of Defense had misunderstood. What? They were carried back? The Minister of Defense's eyes widened in shock. The soldier explained, our cleanup team on the outskirts saw the 5 members of the Garu Knights successfully enter the Fairy Tale Guild's dormitory, and then nothing happened. 2 minutes later, the 5 were thrown out of the window, severely injured and unconscious. Along with this piece of paper, the Minister of Defense took the paper, which read, don't send this kind of trash here to embarrass us next time. Just how strong is this guy? Everyone's faces showed shock. The royal family's strongest Garu Knights were severely injured in just 2 minutes and called trash. George's strength was terrifying. At this moment, the king, the princess, the Minister of Defense, and Arcadius realized that George was not an ordinary Wizarding 10, but a Wizarding 10 comparable to the 4 heavenly kings of Ishkar. At the same time, a deep sense of powerlessness swept over them. Because of such a powerful individual, neither the royal family nor the Magic Council could do anything about it. Moreover, they couldn't ask the Magic Council for help. Forget it, let's just leave it with him for now. There are still 7 years left anyway. Coming to his senses, the king gave the final order, which relieved George, who had been hesitant. That's good. Tomorrow's final will definitely be more exciting than I imagined. Now we should have some peace and quiet. In the inn's dormitory, George closed his eyes and began studying the several spells he had just acquired. He had sensed the Hungry Wolf Knights as soon as they appeared at the inn's entrance, so he had set up a barrier beforehand to prevent a battle from affecting his teammates' rest. The Hungry Wolf Knights were quite strong, all possessing the strength of top-tier mages, and their magic was interesting, but they were naturally far inferior to him. After quickly preparing them, he read their memories, copied their spells, and then threw them out the window. Marking and pursuit, acid corrosion, terrain effects, paper snowstorm, and plant magic, if developed well, they're all quite good. Marking and pursuit leaves a magical mark on an enemy, then launches a weapon to track an attack. He felt the weapon's tracking effect was mediocre. With some improvements, it could be transformed into a magical mark used to track a target's location, or a mark that could be used for tracking magic, such as a killing curse. This way, once an enemy is marked, they have no way to dodge certain targeted spells except by tanking the damage. Acid corrosion uses acid to corrode and fuse with the opponent. It's a special attack type and can be used against enemies with high elemental defense. Terrain effects is a spell he's very interested in. It can freely alter the terrain of a nearby area. For example, turning it into a lava zone, a zone of abnormal gravity, a strong wind zone, an ice zone, or reversing day and night. If the magic power is strong enough, he feels this area could be infinitely expanded. If he could directly alter the terrain of an entire planet, the effect would be truly remarkable. Paper snowflakes can be used with paper magic to create various elemental effects, and even some mental effects. For example, the Blue Cupid card can influence enemies. It should be even more useful when combined with the imperishable curse and psychic abilities. Plant magic, the magic to control and enhance plants, can be fused with elven magic and also incorporated into his wood dragon power. With some development, it has potential. After tomorrow, I'll go to the Magic Development Bureau's library and scan through everything. Tomorrow is the last day of the Grand Magus tournament. Afterwards, he can use the copying charm to secretly copy all the spellbooks in the Magic Development Bureau and take them back to study at his leisure. He's sure to gain a lot. The magic of the Hungry Wolf Knights, as well as the magic and alchemy in the main hall, all originated from the Magic Development Bureau and its library. Chapter 375 was targeted. The final day of the Grand Magic Games. When George led the 4 members of Fairy Tale into the arena, they noticed that besides cheering, the audience was also carrying small flags, each bearing the emblem of their chosen guild. A quick glance revealed that 80% of the flags featured Fairy Tale. Guild leader, it seems everyone really likes us. Hearing the audience shouting their guild's name and waving their flags, the 4 members of Fairy Tale couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. They remembered their first time entering the arena. No one recognized their guild, and hardly anyone cheered for them. Now, almost the entire audience was their supporters. It was all thanks to their guild leader. Otherwise, with the main force of Fairy Tale wiped out and only them remaining, the guild would have been in a terrible state. Strength is what attracts people. These are all external. Improving our inner strength is the most important thing. George didn't feel anything special about it, let alone any emotion. He was very rational. The audience was cheering for him simply because he was powerful enough. If he weren't strong enough, they wouldn't even give him a second glance. This is reality. Therefore, never get caught up in the cheers. Focusing on improving your own strength is the most important thing. He constantly reminded himself of this. In the myriad worlds, with his current strength, money, power, and beautiful women are all within his grasp, along with endless glory and praise. But all of that is built upon his strength. Strength is fundamental. Welcome everyone to the final match of the Grand Magic Martial Arts Tournament. Next, please welcome Mr. Pumpkin to explain the rules of this match. After the host's opening remarks, the projection of the mascot, Pumpkin Man, reappeared in the sky above the venue. The rules for the third Grand Melee are simple. We will randomly drop 30 teams into a temporary town set up in the center of the venue. Once the competition begins, the participating teams will engage in a free-for-all. Mages from different teams will earn 1 point for each enemy they defeat. Defeated mages will have their points reset to 0 and will be eliminated. The time limit is 4 hours. After 4 hours, the scores will be tallied, and the guild with the highest score across the 3 rounds will receive the title of the Kingdom's Strongest Mage Guild, a trophy, and a prize of up to 30 million. After the Pumpkin Man finished explaining the rules, the mages began to discuss among themselves. This final Grand Melee was clearly designed to test the overall strength of the guilds. 30 teams, 150 mages, would be engaged in a chaotic battle in a simulated town. The stronger the team, the more points they would earn. However, besides strength, strategy was also crucial. Should we take the initiative or be passive? Leaky asked George. The combat strategies for this kind of Grand Melee mainly fall into 2 categories, proactive and reactive. The proactive approach involves engaging in combat from the start, continuously eliminating opponents to gain points. The passive approach involves remaining still until a sufficient number of mages have been eliminated, then striking to eliminate those who have scored. The former allows for immediate control in securing points, but the initial battles will inevitably consume a significant amount of magic and stamina, making it easy for other mages to reap the benefits. The latter allows for a more relaxed approach, directly stealing the fruits of others' labor, but if the other side manages to hide well and cannot find the attacker before time runs out, then all efforts will be in vain. You four will defend passively. I'll take the initiative. My movements will be quite noticeable. Once you spot me, move towards me, George instructed after a moment's thought. His plan was simple: push forward relentlessly, and defeating more than half of the mages present would guarantee victory. While the participating mages were intensely discussing their battle strategies, a huge magic circle lit up in the center of the arena, and a temporary town was instantly transported there. For most of the participating teams, becoming the strongest guild was out of the question. However, they still had to fight tooth and nail for points. Because besides the top-ranked guild, the rankings continue to climb based on points, with higher points resulting in higher rankings. Everyone wants their guild to rise as high as possible on the leaderboard. After the Grand Magic Tournament concludes, the entire kingdom will likely use this ranking to determine the overall guild rankings, including those who posted the rankings. Whether for honor or future guild missions, they absolutely won't slack off in the final match. Many guild mages plan to avoid the major guilds as soon as they enter the town, then fight weaker guild mages, gain a few points, and then hide until the tournament ends. Dong. As the gong sounded, 150 mages from 30 teams were blindfolded and led into the temporary town, placed in designated buildings. The Grand Magic Tournament venue was converted from a mountain, making it extremely large. Combined with the various buildings in the town obstructing the view, even with 150 people inside, finding the others wasn't easy. Just imagine how vast the arena was, with its seating area accommodating not only most of the citizens of the City of Flowers, but also many citizens from other towns and even countries. A closer look reveals that the entire arena was actually not much smaller than a typical city. The competition begins. As the announcer's voice echoed throughout the arena, almost simultaneously all the mages in the temporary town removed their magical eye masks. This feels a bit like a variety show I watched in my past life, George muttered to himself, tossing the eye mask aside. Looking around, he found himself in the master bedroom on the second floor of a residential building in the temporary town. Stretching, he went to the balcony, spread his wings, and flew out. Releasing his senses, he quickly spotted a mage cautiously peeking out of a house not far away. It's it. At the same time, the mage saw George, immediately turning pale with fright. It activated wind magic to envelop its body and fled as fast as it could. He's collapsed. George instantly caught up and used a stun spell to send him flying. Steel Fang Guild's Ashpa has been defeated by Fairy Tale's George and eliminated. A magical announcement immediately rang out in the arena. However, just as George was preparing to look for the second victim, 4 announcements simultaneously sounded in the arena, causing him to frown. Is this being targeted? End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.